next one when you are,
Yep.
Mr. Evans.
Good evening, and welcome to the May 28th, 2024 Preston County Board of Education meeting. After a brief moment of silence, Ms. Feathers, our Vice President, will lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Preston County Schools is
At this time, I entertain a motion for the board to go into executive session for an expulsion diversion plan.
so moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 502. So everybody, if you would, please, 548. May I have a motion to accept the administration's disciplinary recommendation for student A?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. This will be on the computer.
Voting is open.
Would you tell them and wave to Miss Green? So I can go ahead then? Or you want to wave her in first? Miss Graham? Yes.
How do you know?
Right now?
We're not supposed to start till 6.
Oh, okay. So at this time then, I'll entertain a motion for.
Mr. President, I move for a recess until 6 p.m.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers, to go into recess until 6. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 5:49, we're in recess.
To elaborate, it's not that we didn't want to start with all you wonderful people, but the agenda says we have to start at 6. So.
Okay, let me get this.
Psst. Psst.
You're welcome.
Oh, yep.
It says it's 6, did I miss that evidently?
You won't watch it?
I did. I didn't know that.
Everyone upset me.
Yeah, it will.
Upset me. I mean, I don't understand why they're not prosecuted. Is it bad?
Busted the city Spencer and took the bag out and destroyed it, so all in nothing.
Nothing was done about this, obviously, because it's not in her file. It's just, huh?
I mean, everyone else needed the child.
I know, yeah. That's the thing. So,
I'm gonna ask her to one second.
ask her to come up, because I would like to be privy to that conversation. I mean, just be conscious that. Jacob and Travis are on their way. They're passing the reins to the post office. If they're by chance not here, could we just do one of the other recognitions first? Teachers. But they'll be sure.
Coach.
Okay. Be better that way. I mean, because you have.
I can call everyone. Show you.
It was a setup for 7.
It's all like,
It's that, it's just everything was set up for 2 extra people.
now, kids from CTE built this office. I don't know if you realize that, this building was built. Because it ended, basically, I'm trying to think here, basically, probably close to almost the Epsom. They probably built this whole extra.
I'm sorry I missed the 4 o'clock. Totally forgot about
I apologize, I should have sent a text out too.
it. Not your responsibility in any way, shape, or form. I'm just, my apologies. I would have been here and I just didn't, I just completely, I remember the student hearing and I put it on the calendar and I remember when I saw something.
It's kind of weird setup, like, 2 different meetings. And
I remember when I saw, well, again, that was the thing.
We've never done
it. I remembered it and I thought at that time, I need to go change my calendar and I wasn't at the office and so I didn't. And by the time I got there, I just completely missed it.
Bruce, I don't have it on the agenda tonight, but for the last meeting in June, we really need to try to push it back. Angie or I are both in Florida.
Be a short meeting. They can't be
Oh, no,
called.
we can't touch those. I'm not.
Well, I will try to have my valuable stuff on the 10th, but I'm coming back, like, I'm here tomorrow and I'm
I'm
gone
not
for a
even
week and a
around.
half.
Look,
I'm glad.
you're talking
Where you
to
going?
us. Say hi to Dad.
Papa. Hi.
My replacement. I'm training him.
Gotta train them young.
And then take this.
So
What's that?
I'll put something,
You go.
I'll put something on the 10th agenda, I mean, possibly Thursday.
Don't knock real hard.
And we're gonna have to, we don't wanna really do it on Friday.
What's this?
Candy. Jimmy always has his
I'm flying
snacks.
back Wednesday afternoon,
You like these?
the last meeting in June.
Let me get to the calendar.
No?
Angie and I are both
You
at model school.
want a gummy?
So it's- we're not, neither of us will be here Monday.
Okay.
I like the
But they're kind of like gummy bears.
I wasn't
Shaped
planning on
different.
going this year.
So it's the
When
24th.
Kingwood, and when we had multiple presenters, I felt
Lemonade.
that's kind of what I thought.
Lemonade flavor.
So we're not doing it this day.
No, no, no,
I
no.
What are you
would,
saying, Thursday, the 27th?
Not shaky.
well, yeah, 'cause the 30th is a Sunday, correct?
Right.
Probably,
Huh?
possibly, if that would work for you guys.
You did what?
sour.
Like Thursday night would be fine. And I'm not sure, you may not be back, right? Are you staying down beyond the conference? I'm coming back, so I can do it on the 27th.
Okay, that's not an issue with me.
I'll put it on the next agenda, if that's,
No,
we can do
this
27, 28.
Small.
I mean, if somebody wanted to do it like Friday through the day,
I said five.
Okay,
that would be,
That'd be okay. I mean, I'm good.
I would, I could put both options and you guys can just select.
I'm
Gotcha.
good with 27th.
Gotcha.
Days are really hard right now.
We're not allowed to do it once. It's in the rules.
That's fine.
It's
I
written
just
down
think
on
it's
that
really
paper.
hard
It
right
says
now.
only
not
camera
an
one
Summer
time.
normally would be okay, but right now we're.
That's it.
We're out.
Not an issue. That answer that question?
Yeah, I'll just put it for the 27th.
Truck. Goofy.
And you'll take care of the medication.
This is, what is this, Chad?
For sure.
So
What do you
you
think?
have Steve, and then you have Josie Limbo, Josie, Craig is
I saw
on.
this.
And then the other.
Why does it have two books?
That is just
You can use it on either side.
Josie's where they, Lynette's what two adventures.
They're not
Maybe,
sour.
I don't know. That's
They're
the thing.
sweet.
Put a whole handful in your mouth and you'll know what they are.
Is yours executive session?
This one.
It's
What's this one?
blueberry lemonade.
Just comes up on that sheet.
Wrong answer.
Don't worry, he uses the other hand for all of his snot. You're good.
Blueberry lemonade.
Years
Taste it.
ago, when this first was son, he was what, 20
You want the pink one?
He was little. And
Like
Connie, they would come. Hey, thank you for doing that today.
Oh yeah, that one looks yummy. Strawberry lemonade.
Okay.
That one's gonna be
Anyhow,
good
Connie, her
and sweet.
and daughter played volleyball. And Connie could buy a candy bar and Mountain Dew. And she couldn't even, this went on for a couple weeks, she couldn't figure out why they stopped the ball game. And,
Mike, the camera's still on?
You wanna taste it?
Oh,
The lights are still going through the street.
just,
Wanna taste it?
no, they're not streaming, it's not
Oh, I
streaming.
like it.
No, that's how she's
It's
getting
minty.
the test.
Ooh, now my head is thick. Second.
moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
What? This is big
This
voice.
was, enter back in the open session, that was Mr. Kisner.
Yeah, is this an open voice?
No, it's not to be a voice. Kisner, and it
Okay.
was seconded by whom, Mrs. Feathers?
Ms. Feathers, yes. Voice vote, Mr. Tatham?
Yes.
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 4-0, what time?
6 o'clock.
Perfect.
Okay, next on the agenda will be recognitions. At that time, I will turn it over to Mr. Martin.
I think we got to approve the agenda first.
You gotta approve the agenda.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're right. At this time, thank you. At this time, entertain a motion for the board to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms. Feathers. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Do recognitions next, right?
Yep.
Next on the agenda will be recognitions. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Martin.
Okay, Mr. Huggins, we have a number of people to recognize tonight. We're actually going to start off, during our last meeting, we recognized
Bless you.
Autumn Sheets as our Service Person of the Year. Tonight, we're going to be recognizing our Teacher of the Year and our Coach of the Year candidates. So we will start by recognizing our Teacher of the Year. And I'm going to read, this is a letter of reference that was sent on behalf of our Teacher of the Year candidate. I'd like to read this before we would have Mrs. Rose come forward. So, members of the West Virginia Teacher of the Year Selection Committee, I am writing this letter in support of the selection of Preston County Teacher of the Year Sarah Rose as the 2025 West Virginia Teacher of the Year. Mrs. Rose is a fourth grade teacher at West Preston School, and she exhibits the skills, work ethic, and devotion to her school and students that are desired and necessary for strong consideration as a state-level winner of the award. Mrs. Rose has worked for Preston County Schools for 10 years at West Preston School, following her graduation from West Virginia University in 2012 with a master's degree in early education. Prior to coming to Preston County, Mrs. Rose served as a substitute teacher for Montague County Schools and served as a lead teacher at the Hildebrandt Learning Center. During her time at West Preston, Mrs. Rose has continually worked to enhance her skills in the classroom by seeking professional development on subjects such as writing instruction, running a flipped classroom, incorporating creative project-based learning activities, and working with trauma-affected students. In addition, Mrs. Rose has taken summer coursework through the American Battlefield Trust and visited numerous museums and historic sites that have helped to enhance her instruction. Mrs. Rose continually demonstrates a kind, caring demeanor while working with her students and establishes high expectations based on both her students' individual abilities. She provides her students with high-quality, project-based learning opportunities that encourages a spirit of lifelong learning. Mrs. Rose also continually works to develop positive relationships with her students in an effort to meet them where they are academically and help them to grow and prosper. In reviewing Mrs. Rhodes' submitted application and talking with her building administrators and coworkers, and in substituting in her classroom, and in personally observing her work at West Preston, her instruction is thoughtful and creative, actively engages her students, and focuses on their individual strengths and weaknesses. In addition, she always strongly advocates for her students and is continually working in their best interest. Mrs. Rose has demonstrated outstanding leadership skills as well, serving as the West Preston Student Comprehensive Support and Improvement Committee head. She heads the school mentor program and is a member of the school response to intervention team. She's authored rigorous curriculum design units for fourth grade teachers, serves on the school hiring committee, and has served as a facilitator for countywide professional development activities. In addition, Mrs. Rose has attended the Model Schools Conference along with the contingent of county teachers just last June. In summation, Mrs. Rose has been an outstanding teacher for Preston County Schools and specifically West Preston School. Mrs. Rose's work with her students is truly remarkable. The growth, development, and self-confidence demonstrated by her students is a model for classrooms throughout the district. In addition, Mrs. Rose's contributions to the school at large are greatly appreciated by the West Preston community, and we are truly blessed to have Mrs. Rose here in Preston County. So I just wanted to share that. I think all of those ring very true. I would like to call forth our Preston County Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Sarah Rose. And Sarah has submitted her application as the West Virginia Teacher of the Year, and we hope to, hopefully we'll hear some good news there the next month. So Sarah, if there's anything you'd like to.
Speech.
Sarah, come on up and come on up, Sarah, come on up.
Alright, let's all kind of squish together. Ready?
Thank you, Sarah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sneaking up on me.
With your speech.
Thank you.
Okay, our next recognition is going to be for our Preston County Coach of the Year. And I must say that Mrs. C.G. Bakewell truly is a coach in all seasons. C.G. is this year's Preston County Coach of the Year. She has served as the Aurora School head cross country and track coach over the past 3 years. She has also served as both an assistant and head girls basketball coach, and I'm sure if they start any other sports at Aurora, C.G. will probably coach those as well. Under C.G.'s guidance, the Aurora track and cross-country programs have been highly competitive, with the team boasting multiple county boys and girls county champions. If you walk into school, there's banners of the kids hanging there, and CG always does a great job of really trying to recognize her students whenever possible. CG has also worked to host the school's first cross-country meet this season, which when I was the principal at Aurora School, I specifically even put gates at certain parts of the adjoining farm, hoping that someday they would get cross-country at the school. So it really, I was very, very happy to see that you all were able to host a meet in the community. I think that's absolutely wonderful. In addition, CG has worked to obtain needed field event equipment to better prepare her athletes for multiple field events in the track. If you go to the lower parking lot at Aurora, it looks like It looks like a true track and field training facility, and a lot of that is to the efforts and hard work of CG. CG has also had her athletes participate in the annual Run For It event in Tucker County as a fundraising option, and has organized several additional successful fundraising activities for the betterment of her teams and her student athletes. CG's efforts are tireless on behalf of her teams and her student athletes. She is highly deserving of this year's award, and we are proud to have her serve as our District Coach of the Year. I would like to ask Mrs. C.G. Baktor to please come forward. If there's anything you'd like to say, go right away.
Hold it up, thank you.
Come on up, C.G.
She'd rather stand by you.
Okay, ready? Okay, great.
Hey, congratulations, C.G.
Congratulations to both of you. Next, Mr. Martin, I think you have some more
We
recognitions.
we do. Mr. Huggins, we have additional student recognitions. We're going to be recognizing this year's state-level Golden Horseshoe winners for 2024. I would actually like to call County Testing Coordinator Lynette Ryan to please come forward, and she can speak a little bit about the Golden Horseshoe testing process.
We have 4 this year who won at the state level, and they will be going to Charleston on the 11th, I believe it is, to see if they're state winners and to be recognized for this great achievement. So I will call these up. Sarah Dew, Kaden Rankin, Brianna Watkinson, and Jacob Smith.
We'd certainly like to also recognize each of the students' teachers. Jacob's West Virginia Studies teachers was Angela Nozzle. At South Preston, Caden and Sarah's was Nick Miller. And at Central Preston was Andrew Hurst. We certainly appreciate the efforts of their classroom teachers as well. So congratulations, students.
All right, ready? And then I'll get one with you. They're gonna come down and shake your hands and stay there.
You got the picture? We'll wait till you're done.
Okay. It's not planning to cooperate. It does this occasionally. Thank you for your patience.
Congratulations. You want to stand down here?
Oh, yeah, come down here.
Congratulations. Scoot in, you gotta get one more photo.
Push everything together.
Mr. Tate, you should get over it. I made Mr. Business.
If my sister has to stand by me, your son has to stand with me.
All right, ready?
Okay, congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's cool. And for those that are here, if you want to leave, you feel free to, or you can stay with us. We don't want to run you off, but I don't want you to think you have to sit here. I know some of you have appointments to get to, so I'm going ahead with the agenda. And again, thank you for being here. Congratulations to the Golden Horseshoe winners. What a great honor. You represented us well. Thank you. Moving on, make sure I'm right now. Delegations next. First on the agenda, Ms. Crystal Sisler. Okay, she's not here. Next, Ms. Josie Rimbold. Your husband texted me, said he wouldn't be here, so. Ms. Rimbold, as you come up, is this something we need to talk about in executive session?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. President, I move we go into executive session for the purpose of,
I guess, let me back up. Are you
So
going to possibly mention names or something? Okay. Now, Mr. Kisner, so it'd be a legal issue.
yeah, for the purpose of a legal discussion.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers to go into executive session. Any questions? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 6:14.
Okay.
Hearing none, call for the vote. Voice vote?
Yes.
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 Yes, 6:41. Mr. Martin, I will encourage you to follow up with the concerns that was discussed in executive session. And I thank you. Next on the agenda, Ms. Lynette Ryan. Do you need executive session? I do. Okay.
Mr. President, I move for an executive session regarding professional.
I think she must just.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, 6:41.
You're in.
Yep, no, they are. Thank you. Next on the agenda, presentation, Ms. Sovcek. Attendance rates, plans, and student support services.
I don't know when I'm on the agenda. I hope I'm soon.
You didn't tell me you paid me to move you up, right?
Okay, so as you guys know, I've been in this position as an interim for a few months, and tonight I will be board approved, hopefully. So I'm just gonna share what I've been doing and just some information on different sections of the attendance director and student support. So my goal is to promote regular attendance and assist in eliminating barriers for student success. And with that, and how I'm gonna promote that and do that, is by networking, collaborating. And I've been doing this within the past 2 months, but I have a lot more areas to reach out in. And with the networking, collaborating, I've been reaching out to administrators here in the county, with the county and state directors, with student support team, with the regional county directors of attendance, community partners and resources, as well as the Preston County School staff. I need to increase communication about attendance and make sure that it's a part of regular communications in the school systems and in the community. So communication with the Preston County staff, students, families, and community agencies. Attendance updates at monthly principals meetings and at monthly student support meetings. I need to be visible at open houses at all of the schools as well as family nights. I'm going to promote positive attendance and communication at each school, so whether that's a parent call just out saying that someone did something wonderful or awesome, or postcards that was one thing that I implemented at Central, and they were just positive, no postcards, and I got them done by Schaefer Printing, and so whenever a teacher wanted to promote something and congratulate a student,
they would just come down to my office, grab it, write a little note, and then I would address it and send it out. So that was just something that they could enjoy then when they got home, and their parent can also then see that, because most middle school kids don't share the good stuff with their parents as well, or all kids. I need a support system in place, and so I went, this is something new coming from the State Department with attendance. I attended the West Virginia State Collaborative at the beginning of May, and back in December, a team from the high school went with Mrs. Schaefer. So I went this time, and what they want the counties to do is to do a tiered system, a multi-tiered system for support for attendance. So I'm gonna meet over the summer with some attendance teams here, and we are gonna plan that together and then promote it when we come back in the school year. Another concern in talking about increasing the communication, I know that busing is an issue, and we have, sometimes bus routes don't run. So we really need to make sure that the secretaries know what bus each student is on so that they're coding it correctly. Because I know that has been an issue this year, that students have been counted absent and it was due to the bus. And so they're getting attendance letters that were not so nice to the parents, and then the parents are getting really defensive about it. So making that clear, transparent, and getting that taken care of. One thing that I just did a couple weeks ago and then shared with the student support team is created a list of community resources from Preston County and then some from Mon County too, to give out to like the CIS student, like their coordinator students, McKinney-Vento students, and then any other student in their school. So if their families needed resources over the summer, they knew where to reach out since they were not in school and couldn't reach out to their teachers and their student support workers. I gave you a little chart for the average daily attendance, because that's what we're going to be focusing on, is regular attendance coming from the state down. So if you just look at that chart, Aurora has the highest, and it's at 94.63, which is phenomenal. We want to be at 95. So I'm not going to read all of the numbers to you, but just looking at it, and then Preston High is the lowest. So in that being the lowest, and obviously the largest, because everyone's going there, I have already started working with Mrs. Herco, and she's taking over all of the attendance next year at the high school. And we have already had, I want to say 15-ish CA2 meetings with parents and the student there and the guidance counselor, whomever, and the student support worker, if they're working with one of the CIS workers, to meet with the parent, the student, to see what happened this year, and to let them know that we are meeting at the beginning of September right away again, same place, to start off the school year on a clean slate and a positive slate, hopefully then as well. So I have done that. I've worked, or I've met with a couple other at Rollsburg. I met with some at Terra Alta as well too. Any of the deans or administrators who have reached out to me, I have scheduled those CA2s, and we've already had those before school ended. So as I'm being approved hopefully tonight for this position, and then I will, there will be a posting hopefully for the truancy diversion specialist. So then I'll have someone else to start collaborating and working with. And so the new Senate bill for attendance, it's going through the state. There's a lot of talk in it with truancy diversion. So my plan is to work with the truancy diversion specialist, and then with each attendance team at the school moving forward, setting out the laid out plan, which I will have for you guys when we start school then as well, with the intervenes of when we're calling the parents, when we're sending letters, and I'll have that process laid out for you. But I can't do that until I have the whole team and meet with everyone. So I will be bringing that back in the fall. Any questions so far?
Relax.
Now we'll go to homeschool. So homeschool, I can't give you an exact number on this. So my goal this summer, now that when I become official, is to go through all of the homeschool files
and hope and see what matches with the online state platform. Because in the online state platform, you have to enter every student, their information, when they send their notice of intent to start. And then you also have to update it when they have to do their summative assessment. So in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. You also have to terminate them if they're terminated. And I don't know that that has taken place. I can't say that it has. I can just say that a couple of the students that I saw on there as I've been looking through it have been in school because they were at Central, so I know they were in school. So I'm gonna hope to clear all of that up this summer, and then I can give you more accurate numbers and information on homeschool. I have deterred a couple people from wanting to go to homeschool already in this position. So I reached out to the administration at that school and a team of teachers to meet with the parent before just trying to pull. So that has worked so far, so I'm gonna continue to do that as well. Open communication from day one.
So just to clarify, when you say terminate, you're saying there are students that we're servicing that, or there are students that are servicing as students in the system that are currently being reported as homeschool, which means we're not getting any funding, right? Like if that's accurate, right? We're not getting any funding. We are providing the services. They are part of our head count, but they're inaccurately being reported to the state as homeschooled.
If the state is looking at the homeschool app, then
Yeah,
yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes.
And by terminate, you just mean terminating the status of,
Yes.
like, changing them to be an active enrolled student.
So so they have to fill out a notice of intent to start, but then when the parent wants to stop the homeschool and do anything else, they're supposed to send a notice of termination in as well.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to be kept in the file, and then in the system, there's a date that's supposed to be put there. So
Yeah.
then it would go to inactive status. Because when you toggle between on the system, there's active and inactive for the students. So yes.
So to clarify, then, you're saying homeschool would be, homeschool active would be they're homeschooling, but they're still getting services through Preston County schools?
No,
No,
if they
okay.
are homeschool active, they are actively homeschooled by someone other than Preston County Schools.
Okay, and we have to determine if any of those need to be terminated, and by
Yes.
terminating, that would be their homeschool
Would be inactive.
inactive with
Yes.
us.
So that's what I'm gonna be doing,
Okay.
moving forward, going through, so I'm gonna have to go through all of the files and then just type every kid in and see what their status is and see if the paperwork is in the folders.
So when a student registers to become, when a parent registers their student to come back into the system, do we ask where was your student at the prior year?
I can talk on that.
Okay, I'm sorry,
No, that's
I'm
okay.
asking anybody.
Well, I can talk on that from Central's point, and because I was a part of that for so long, like helping Miss Vicky in
Yeah.
and out, and Mr. Martin, and I actually called Miss Vicky to clarify today. So I said, I know we had these couple students when I was there, but they're showing that they're active. And I said, when you registered them, did you have a paper from anyone saying like, oh, they were homeschooled, we need to terminate it and fill this out? And she said, no. She said, we just enrolled them. So I said, moving forward, I'm creating a sheet that everyone will have access to. So we're using the same sheet. And, a parent can do it on their own. But if they haven't, when they go to enroll in the Preston County schools, they need to fill that out first. And have the secretary then send it to me so that I can make sure it's correct online.
Okay, so you've been given the authority at all of our schools from now on, when somebody registers as a new student, will be required to tell us where their student was being serviced the prior year, so that secretary kicks off a process, whether it's to you or whatever, that
Yes.
fixes this and nips it in the butt the day they're being registered.
Because
Okay,
they already know if they're coming from another school because they have to request the records.
Right.
So yes.
yeah, that's why I assumed it was already there, because I knew we had to get a transcript if they're coming from another school. So if they're marking homeschool, my concern, so anyways, you're on top of it, thank you.
I'm trying to be, thank you. Okay, Hope Scholarship. Oh, one more thing for homeschool. So the assessments from the 3rd graders, the 5th graders, 8th and 11th, those have been coming in because they're due by June 30th. So that's another thing I've been entering into the homeschool platform, knowing, so the state knows that yes, they did take their assessment, they're good for the year. Okay, Hope Scholarship. So families have been pursuing Hope Scholarship, they've been sending the notice of intent in, and when they do, I have not put them into the platform yet, because we can't do that until July 1st. So we've been just making their records, their folders, and getting it sorted so that it can be done right away, July 1st. However, they also have to have assessments coming in yearly. So some people have been sending those assessments in, and I go to the Hope Scholarship platform, and I've been entering those that they are making progress as well. McKinney-Vento. So for this school year, 2023-2024, we had 74 McKinney-Vento students in Preston County Schools. We did not receive the sub-grant funding. The paper said that the score was not high enough and that the state received a historically high number of applicants compared to the previous years. However, we'll reapply for the next grant cycle, and then we'll all be looking for other grants out there. I believe Mrs. Varner said at the last meeting that Mrs. Varner, myself, and 2 social workers attended a grant professional development, so we'll be looking for more grants for that. There was it was during COVID, and it's called American Rescue Plan for Homeless Children and Youth, and the funds were never finalized in the system, but they are finalized now. So we're good with that funding, it's coming through for McKinney-Vento. We did receive a letter of compliance for the sub-grant that everything worked out from this past year. And then community and schools, for the upcoming year, we'll keep all of the same schools having the community and schools coordinators. We will have to post one position though, because the coordinator from South Preston resigned as of June 30th. So that one will be posted in the near future, and we'll move on from there.
The tear-out position will no longer be in play,
It
correct?
is no longer correct. And I think we went over this last time, but they are funding, the state, they're funding the other high school position for next year. So we're okay there.
Hey.
And the South Preston one, it's on the agenda tonight for you guys to approve it. We have not posted it yet, because I want for you guys to approve the resignation before we post it.
That's all I have.
Any questions?
So you said a truancy specialist earlier,
Yes, truancy diversion specialist, I believe is what it's called.
and that's a new position that you're expecting to be available
We
in the
had
future?
it before.
As a position Mrs. Miller
Yeah.
previously worked in.
She vacated it, so
All right.
it's in the budget.
So there's an existing position that you expect that we will still be maintaining and will be posting?
Correct.
Okay. And everything you said sounds fun.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you got the memo, I'm not the fun one. I think I'm tons of fun, but they say I'm not the fun one.
This isn't a voting issue, though.
Oh, you know what, I
But-
forgot to say 2 things that were on your paper now that I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
I just thought of that, because I forgot, I made the paper at the last minute, I was like, I should probably show them that. Students on informal probation that have been referred from Preston County Schools, we have 10 students. And then students that are actively in court are 11 families. So I have been going to court as well.
Yeah. So
But-
part of the
and for-
non-fun stuff.
And for those of you, that's pretty good numbers. And it's not saying that there doesn't need to be more,
I'd say they really
but
don't.
coming from the role I did, that's a decent set of numbers. Go ahead,
So
any other questions?
have you been working with the prosecuting attorney regarding, of course, the new legislation next year, 5 absences, right? Period. Like, have you had a meeting with him? Is he on board?
Yes.
Is he, okay.
So I have been.
So hopefully with you, again, presumably, hopefully knowing that you've got this job.
Yes.
Like, that's on your radar.
I have a meeting set for the end of June with one of the prosecuting attorneys, and then we're gonna go from there to meet with everyone else, yes.
Okay, all right. Would love, as a board member, to hear the results of that meeting and the reception that you received and what their perspective is. My perspective is we invest now so that we're not investing in jail cells later. So would love to hear back on that, whether that's an email to me or to come present to us or whatever. But again, we're here to support you. And so we need to know you're getting the support you need from that branch that has an obligation, right?
Thank you so much.
Are you going to be managing the attendance incentives for the schools? Are you overarching on any of that? Do you know?
There's not funding for attendance incentives. So no, I'm not going into that realm of that mess.
Okay, so that's each individual local principal's thing. So, but still might be something that you'd want to report on so that you know of what's going on, since overarching attendance is under you, right?
And I will support it, praising, but not financially.
Okay. One of the things that I became aware of this past year is that we have schools that are not reporting their attendance timely. So I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I don't know how you find a way to rein that in or to help support that to function better. But for instance, if my student is absent and it doesn't get put into the system until 3 days later, I don't get a call because that action took place, and the calls only go out for what gets reported in the day that it's reported. So again, a student in one of our school systems gets reported absent, but the attendance doesn't make it from the classroom teacher to the office until, say, 1 day later. We won't even go into 3 or 4 days, but 1 day later, right? Those automatic calls that we've initiated and invested in can't go out because they don't go out retroactive. They go out based on the day. So I don't know if that's something you're aware of or not, but that's something that I can tell you factually is occurring in our system, that again, hopefully something that we can figure out how to address and how to figure out what teachers are not reporting that timely that's creating that's resulting in that.
Yes.
And hopefully it's not widespread. I just know of at least one instance where, yeah.
So, and this is something that I'll have to work with here and what we're allowed to do or allowed to say and whatnot, but, so our teachers at Central put it in to Schoology right away, every period, instantly. So then it went to the office, and then our secretary coded it right away.
Okay, and again, I don't know if in each school, if the teachers are inputting it, or if it goes to the office and the office. I know of at least one, and this is not something I've reported that nobody else has done anything on.
Yeah.
I'm just, since we have this opportunity to discuss,
Yes.
I'm just saying, like, somehow there has to be a way for you to be able to tell if that's occurring, and then for that to flow so that we can figure out how to fix those situations. Because again, I don't know if anybody else knows what's going on,
Yes.
like, or to what extent that information is available.
A lot of that is because of substitutes, especially at the high school, is that a substitute has to do it by paper normally and set it up, and that could be when it comes in late, because like if someone doesn't run the paper up quick enough, it
Yeah,
won't report.
yeah. And the high school, and again, the high school's a different animal because we do that by period, whereas at the lower schools, it's done by the whole day, in those situations,
Central,
like.
we did it by periods still, so the schools can do it by periods.
Okay. Is Central sending out a notice per period of absences? I thought the middle schools were only doing it once, because I thought the sync from Mr. Sines only happened once a
I
day.
think there was only one call. We had to tell them which period we wanted to call, but we still mark it.
You
So
can
if
still
there's
mark
a
it, essentially.
question,
Okay.
when I was having an attendance meeting, like if there was a question, we could still look at each period.
Gotcha.
But that's definitely something I will look into, thank you.
Yeah, but I said, just something that I know that, again, hadn't addressed with anybody. This is not, that somebody's been passing, it's just something that I became aware of is going on, that somehow we've got to get in front of. Because again, the parent that doesn't find out because they don't get the notice, if they have multiple children in the system, they get used to it for these kids, and at the end of the year. The other thing that I think that we had discussed was the potential of some kind of an attendance report with the report cards. Or making that
So
information
there
available.
is-
There is.
There is with WEBIS 2.0, there is a report that we can print out for every student. It can go home with every report card.
Okay.
Because one of my regional directors showed me that, and they
Okay.
started doing that, so yes,
Yeah.
that's.
Now, again, it's still up to the parent to go read it, but
Yep.
hopefully through that,
Yes,
because again,
yes.
this is gonna change. Everybody, I expect every county in the state's about to get warnings on this 5 things, so we're not gonna, what I prefer is to be the one that doesn't. So, I mean, like, your whole life is about to be different, because right now we're used to 10 per semester, but we've got to be in front of, like, at 3, and the parents could be like, why are you telling me at 3? Like, well, I'm telling you at 3, because at 5, we're too late.
Yeah, well, and every school should have been reporting at 3, because that was already in policy. So So it's,
5
yeah,
and 8.
So just to clarify real quick, we are keeping the software that sends notifications home if you're marked absent, because I think that's working well
Yep.
now. So that's going to be in place for this coming school year.
Yeah, we don't intend to make any changes in regards to thrill share.
Okay.
Anything else? Well, Ms. Sofcheck, thank you. It doesn't sound like you've done much, but it's appreciated. I couldn't resist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go on, I forgot to say when we came out of executive session, there was no formal activity from the executive session. I apologize for missing that. That's my fault. And again, seriously, thank you, ma'am. Moving on, next to entertain a motion for the board to approve the minutes from the 5/13/24 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions, discussion, or corrections? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Next on the agenda is discussion information. The Aurora School of Isolation budget for 24-25. The Aurora School has been receiving school of isolation funding from the West Virginia legislature annually for a number of years. The allocated amount that was issued late in 23-24 academic year was $100,000. The funding is designed to help offset the costs associated with the operation of an an isolated school. Each year, the Aurora School Local School Improvement Council submits a budget for the board's review and will be considered by Ms. Kerstetter in determining budgeting for funds. The provided list identifies projects in order for the priority determined by the Aurora School LSIC. Mr. Martin.
And Mr. Huggins, Mrs. White is in attendance tonight, so I thought she maybe could speak to the processes of development of these projects. But Mrs. White, they do have written copies, and it's in the agenda as to what was submitted from the Local School Improvement Council. If you have anything to add for any of the items there, Mrs. White, in terms of why these are high priorities and needs, you might want to, if somebody could, you might want to speak to the mic, though.
So our first one was the One Book, One School. We've done that for 2 years now, and it has been extremely successful this year, even more so than last. I think it was very engaging for our families. We are ensuring that kids are getting that 15 minutes to 20 minutes of reading at home every night. So it's crucial, I feel like, to the improvement of our students. We'd like to get our STEAM room organized and up and running this next year, so we really need some organizational things now, so everything has a little place. So when kids come in, they can pull out a drawer and kids can do a STEAM project. We have the library. We had it a little bit higher, so we reduced our original school isolation budget. We had several more items one year, but due to the levy failure, we thought that was not responsible for us, so we really have slimmed this down quite a bit. The library, we'd like $500 more to spend for just keeping our library up to date for things that students would be interested in reading. We don't want our books to get outdated like they were previously. It took quite a while for them to go through those books. And then our theater system really needs some updates still yet. So we wrote those needs down very specifically to what exactly we need first to make our theater a little bit more successful for our students.
Ms. White, one thing I would indicate in terms of some of the theater improvements, you might want to make an inquiry with Mrs. Layton in terms of the firm that was used for Preston's renovations. Feel like did a pretty good job. Could possibly at least provide some quoting for some of the potential work.
So I guess my question is, the original description says, so I think I'm just missing something. The 2023 academic year was $100,000, the allocated amount. So
Yes.
this is $100,000 from the West Virginia legislature, right? All $100,000 is in our possession,
Yes,
and it is all to be spent on Aurora.
yes.
But your budget only is requesting the 15.5. So is that because that generally central office manages the majority of that budget, or like?
It's for operating expenses, generally speaking, so that actually helps offset electricity, fuel, whatever fuel they have there, phones, anything that.
Water testing.
To function. So what she doesn't request, or what, otherwise, or if there's any big projects that they need or done, that money would come out of there as well, and then we use that.
Okay, so we can use the other 85 for other things, which is fine.
We spend all the money, but we allow kind of a.
Yeah. And that 15.5, is it the discretion of central office that they get those funds? Or they have full access to the 100,000, anything left over central office gets? Like, who is the authority? Which side?
They submit their budget, and they can, assuming that nothing else comes up that would require extra funding, then they can use their money that they've requested, and then I use the rest. I move money from the county budget, like I said, electricity that's associated with their school and all that stuff, into that account to clear it out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mrs.
Ms.
White.
Next on the agenda, it is the superintendent's recommendation that the board adopt the attached proposed financial year 25, which is the 24-25 school year, operating budget for submission to the West Virginia Department of Education for approval according to West Virginia Code 18-9B-6A. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner and second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussions? I think Ms. Kerstetter has a slideshow first.
Our clicker's name is Varner.
And that one.
It was in her job description.
This is, I give this presentation every year, just the numbers change. That's the reason. Okay, quick rundown. The general process for the budget is I create it gets approved, or voted upon, and then it's published. And during that time of creation and approval, it's put up so citizens can ask to see what is available. I do the budget report. It is accessed online if anybody would want to peruse what you're actually being presented tonight to approve. And then it has to be submitted to the state by the 30th. And that's like that internal. Okay. All right, first we're going to talk about the general current expense fund, which is made up of actually two funds. Basically, preface this by saying the bulk is obviously the county. There is no levy, the excess levy moving forward thus far. However, to offset some personnel expenses that we have that we weren't getting rid of, we have some carryover in certain categories. There is $184,000 roughly which will be carried over from the excess levy. Any other carryover is actually going to be reestablished during the general budget carryover season in October. So we're just taking a little screenshot of that excess, but it is in these numbers. Okay, so about $184,000. Next. All right, here is the breakdown of the revenue sources. Okay, so you see, I left the line item for the excess. Obviously, you can see there's no more excess funding coming in. But you have the regular levy still, which you actually finalized a little earlier today. You have interest, you have the basic state aid, step 7, which is part of the state aid, but it's kind of separated, so I break it out. Retirement and unfunded retirement PIA, those are all allocations based on FTE of personnel. Then you have some federal sources, which is the federal national land money, which is just a little bit amount, but, and then you have some other funding sources that we have. We have like the energy demand, some fuel tax credit,
And then like the buses, honestly, the disposal property is our annual liquidation of the 2 to 4 buses that we get rid of. I love all because those have really not been selling quickly or with any sort of amount of money. So I always love all those. The indirect cost is the money that we get for managing federal funds. This rate, I will say, the determining of the rate for next year did not occur until after this was pretty much completed. The percent I can take from the federal funds did go up slight, but it's not really enough to make it a huge difference. But generally speaking, the old smaller amount, it was 1.8, it went up to like 1.9. A little bit more, we did a little bit more than that. And then I had the estimate of 3.9 beginning balance, and then the 184 is the carryover from the levy that I just talked about. All right. Okay, this is just a general snapshot of the difference between last year and this year. As you can see, pretty much the taxes, it is just excess levy is the difference. There might be some variance within the regular levy, but it's small. Local sources did go up, mainly because of interest. The state went up because of the pay raises that the state provided, so it's really, we're not getting any more. Actually, if that had not occurred, it would have gone down based on the enrollment decrease. The federal sources, it had gone away a little bit, so I didn't budget for it in the front end last year. I'm going to head into it this year since we got it this year. The indirect costs did go down, or they went up. They go up and down just based on the percentage rate, and it's been going up slightly, even though the amount that we've been given has gone down some. And the beginning balance is just an estimate based on our situation.
Can I ask a quick question on that? So the state sources, so you're saying it's going up 1.3 million, and you said that was because of, I think you said pay increases?
The pay increase given by the state.
So we're getting more from the state, but I'm assuming then we also have to pay more out to our employees.
It is.
It's just going to be
that increase is only to cover the increase in salaries.
So we're going to see that as an expense is going to.
If they would not have received that
We'd have
increase, that number would most likely be a negative since we dropped enrollment. So the state
Okay.
goes down.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. This is just a pretty pie chart of pretty much where we get our funding from. Just a visual. So you can see the majority is the state source. That's where we're going to get all of it. The second is the taxes. So that they do that to help offset. Everything else is just minor. And the carryover, that obviously just, that depends. That needs All right, I wanted to show the fund balance that we have had, speaking of the carryover. In the past, we have done well. I will say that the big increase has really been thankful because of COVID. Honestly, because of the COVID money gave us ability to kind of offset some of our expenses the last several years. That I anticipate that fund balance to come down over the next couple of years and be more what I think is probably long-term surplus carryover. Right now, I think it's just a little elevated because we have managed to, that has really helped us, obviously, with funding. So.
Same position your state is in with their surplus, right? Like.
The next is just some more, so you can see the situation over time. The first graph is going to show you how the line is actually how many FTE we're allowed each year. You notice it's dropping. The increase in funding is only because of the salaries have been going up each year, thankfully. But we really have not been dropping enrollment, so our FTE, how many teachers we can actually have, how much service has been going The next one just kind of gives you an idea of how we have been funding everything the last couple of years. The blue is the county, and then the county would be, in this particular circumstance, the excess levy, mainly. There's really no other, that is what the blue is representing. Obviously, the green is state, so you can see it's still a huge portion, but in the last couple of years, obviously, the excess has really helped the big portion. And then here's the numbers of the enrollment that I was speaking about. You can see they're going down. And so with that decreases the amount that we are getting funded by the state. The next, I'm going to show you, the first way we're going to see how I budgeted is through, think of departments. It's a good way to think of it. Think of it as through see how departments are trending, like how much money is going to each department. So you have the instruction, which is their salaries, things like that. And then it breaks out to, you have like maintenance as a department, transportation as a department. Food service we won't see here because we do not expense food service in the county budget. It would be in the special revenue budget. Okay, so you'll see that in that. We're just talking about the county budget at the moment. Okay.
Bless you.
All right, so you can see, as always, the majority of our expenses go to instruction because that is pretty much where all the salaries really hit. Then you go, I mean, there's still you have the maintenance is the next, and the transportation is the next. There you go. It works. That's pretty much the breakdown of how we expense things.
What's the difference between instructional staff at 2% and instruction, which is salaries, at 59%?
That is dealing more with the technology staff. So it's not, it's a subset. So it's any curriculum services, not instruction, technology, so our techs would be out of that if we had any in county. They are actually being paid out of excess, but they're falling into that category. That's where you're going to see them.
So instructional staff would not be directly in front of a student.
Yeah, they're kind of like a librarian would be coded in that category.
As instructional staff?
So they might interact with students, but they're doing kind of like a sub kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, you can see kind of like any changes. Really, once again, you would have had in last year, the excess levy was included in this. So any real decreases, honestly, here have to do with just the drop of funding available. Because let's say, like with the maintenance, it's still a lot. Like I had to increase our county side budget for the maintenance because obviously we had to pick up things. Same with transportation. But overall, the funding went down, so you're going to see the drop in it. The capital outlays is because the construction category of excess levy is gone, so that money isn't there. And we don't, at this time, there will be carryover, so in the county budget, I did not budget anything specifically for capital outlay. And you can just see the general transfers, which is based on primarily state required transfers.
So can I ask a quick question on that? Like speaking of the levy, so how are we budgeting, say, grass mowing, snow removal, things that previously would have been paid through
That's where
levy?
you can't really see it in this graph because it's such a decrease, but actually, if you would look into actually the documents in the back, you're gonna see, I've picked up all the lawn care, all the, snow, the.
At what cost? Like what department or what area, what line items had to be reduced because obviously we still got to remove snow?
Well, we had a carryover, so really nothing was reduced. We're just dipping into that surplus to.
From last year's general budget surplus.
From the surplus we managed to collect over the last couple of years, That's what I'm
So
essentially using.
for a short term, then we can use our surplus.
Yeah, like I said, that will come, like, that increase that you can see from that chart is going to drop because we have to use it to really operate at this, even at a reduced rate, we still have to use it.
When that surplus is gone, what do we do?
It can't go, like, there will have to be actual cuts to the budget. We can't let it go away. That is something we cannot do. So at some point, we have to figure out what is manageable.
Katrina, you're required to maintain a certain level of budget surplus annually, correct?
Well, there is what they would prefer. Yes, I mean, if we drop below it and we wrote at a very
Right.
zero balance, we're not gonna get, it's not like we're gonna get in trouble, but it would not be the best interest. We would want to make sure that we make cuts prior to that. We just have a little bit of cushion for the next year or two.
If we go into the negative, the state takes over.
No, yeah, I
Like,
understand. Yeah, I
oh,
understand.
well, just to miss,
Yeah, I figured, but like-
Mr. Bones.
But then, like, what would we cut then? Because it's a possibility, definitely, like 2
We
years.
would have to start figuring out what we could trim off. So, the snow removal, the lawn care, we currently have contracts. We might have to pick those up by our employees. There are other things that we pay out that we would have to cut. There's maybe softwares that we pay for,
Ceiling tiles that are ugly don't get replaced.
you have to offset, you have a certain finite for maintenance, let's say, that is, when you hit that line, and you hit that, amount, you have to,
So things just like get
Wait.
bumped down the priority list, like they just,
Yeah.
okay, makes sense.
yeah, and you have to it's a hard line to walk, but you have to walk.
I get that. I mean, so for this current school year, the 24-25, then can we expect to see the same level of services that we've had before? Using grass mowing and snow plowing as the one smaller example, because it's easier for us to visualize that. Are we expected to see the same level of service, grass getting cut the same frequency, just because we're using surplus, or are we going to see a reduction in service?
That will be altered. We're going to trim it down. We're still going to do it, but not quite as frequently.
Right.
It will be monitored not that it wasn't monitored before, but with the grass is a good example. You mow it at a very consistent amount of time because you want it to always be short and you really wanted that.
Yeah, so for mine, I would get it, at my house, I cut it every week and pay for it every week to be cut. Are we now going to every other week schedule?
We were going to extend that timeframe. Yeah, it might get a little longer, is one example. And when we don't have school, it might get even, do it even less because we're not really doing.
We often operate on like a 10-day interval. We may go to like a 14. Okay, this-
Yeah, I was just trying to see, how are we going to see this
Yeah,
budget trimming
yeah, that's.
with our grass trimming?
Already being trimmed. Like, it's trimmed, it's just, it's there. We're not worried about cutting it out completely, but we are going to monitor and keep it at a lower cost.
So you anticipate like a year and a half before it's visible?
No,
Cuts.
next year, we're gonna have to start this gives us a buffer, let's say. We have a buffer every year to determine really what is, necessary, want and need. We're gonna have to make that call over the next year. What is the want, what is the need? And then we're gonna have to just really trim it down to the needs.
But the one that we definitely saw was the reduction in staff due to the expectation levy, right? Like, we know that there's a number of staff that was let off just because in expectation of the levy. But those are the ones, the grass being a little bit taller affects your track kids, maybe practicing your football. Well, we don't have school football, but students that are playing on it, it may be higher, may not be as easy for them to find their ball out in the field when they're playing at recess or what, right? But the thing that's the most prevalent and most immediate is gonna be those teachers that know this is a position, the custodial staff, those things that got affected.
Yeah, not that we didn't make the hard decisions already, it's just that we're trying to step
trying to step into it and not, obviously, it was a quick, we only had
Yeah,
2 months to make those
yeah.
decisions. That's too quick. We have the benefit of having a little bit of give for a year to give ourselves that analysis time.
And I just have one more question in this area. So is the school resource officer, the deputy sheriff, is that being paid out of surplus?
That is not our position, that is a contracted service. So it's not included in that 184,000, but that will be rebudgeted out of carryover. We have carryover in that line item, so that will be one of the priorities for the carryover. And yeah, that will, for another year.
One thing I would say though, Mr. Tatham, is with that being said, while we have carryover in the safety security for a year, I mean, we have a year to basically seek out, potential grant opportunities, some means of trying to pay for it, because beyond that,
Yeah,
we're just not gonna have the money for it.
it's not.
So that, actually, sorry, one last question, sorry. So does this mean that we can anticipate more personnel cuts in the next 3 years? Will that be part of budget trimming, or are we at the, we cannot cut any more staff?
We have to cut staff based on, I mean, our state aid also dictates.
Yeah, and how many students are here, yeah. But let's say
Yes.
for some
So
reason.
there's always a chance that we will have to cut more. I mean, we've cut anticipating the decrease in the levy and the COVID money. Without having the numbers in front of me, there might be a few more that we would have to trim off.
So that isn't out of the question?
It's not, because, we have other funding sources where there are positions, well, we might have to, it's.
You annually have to address,
big
from
picture.
a standpoint of your student enrollment and where you're gonna need
Yes,
certain
so
staffing
the
levels.
state aid will always dictate if we can hire.
It's irresponsible for a district, though, not to assess your personnel, annually. You have to just look and see where you need to potentially make cuts, just again, based upon where, where your student basis is and where your needs are.
Okay, next we're gonna look at same numbers theoretically, but in a different way. So before we were looking at it by department, now we're gonna look at it more by the actual expense. So over everything. You go to the next one. Okay, so here you can see you have all the salaries, all the fixed charges, the technical services, the property, purchase services, supply with the big one, equipment, and then the reserve and other, and then the transfers, which is transfers out. So, go ahead. So here you can see, our big is always salaries and fixed charges.
Yep.
And then everything else is pretty much broken down into that last quarter.
And, I'm sorry, what did you say the transfers were, the 4%, the transfers?
They are transfers into other categories. We get state aid money that we have to then transfer to other projects. So it kind of gives, it's not necessarily specific, but you have the bus purchases are a transfer. You have professional development, this step A kind of pulls out of the general and comes into a smaller project, things like that. And then there also is a transfer where we transfer county money into child nutrition to clear it up, to make it zero. And I always break the pot. I also want to give you, this is our debts. We really don't have any anymore. This is just the QZAB is really the only one that's lingering. And it was with the construction of the schools. We do get, with this one, we do get some IRS money, gives us our interest back, but it varies, I can't really tell you how much it is gonna be, but it's anywhere between 93 and 96% of what we pay out, we do get back. And obviously, it is almost done as well, we don't have payments left on that. And then we'll be completely done over with that. So, in summary, with the revenue, you can see where most of our funding is coming from again. Once again, any carryover that we have from any source, county or excess, will be
budgeted at school week October timeframe. It's given by the state. You have to wait so you can get through the financial season in order to actually know how much you have to carry over. So, you can see our budget that is 49 million. Here is a different breakdown of, this is more of the, this is all kind of the personnel side of things. So you see the revenue coming in, and then how we break it out between the personnel, a little bit of the levy, coaching salaries, and then like substitute charges, shuttle runs, retiree premiums, which is actually a number that we actually get kind of in our allocation. Unemployment is really just a standard number. I kind of budget always high. We really, except for a couple of years, we've really never gotten near that number, but it's always better. Sorry, you never know. And the unfunded liability is also determined, it's an allocation, but actually they don't give us the actual allocation for the year until halfway through the year. So that number is based off this year's number, and that is per state requirement, how we budget it.
Real quick, unemployment, under what circumstances do we pay unemployment? Is that if we release somebody before their contract's out, where we take action?
It's if they leave. So if they leave, then they can file for unemployment.
Yeah, but if they leave on their own accord, do we fight it?
I mean, oh, yeah, well, there's a lot, sometimes, we are constantly dealing with unemployment situations. A lot of subs like to claim that,
I didn't hear.
I'd like to claim we don't have work for them.
yeah, there's a lot of.
But we aggressively go, we aggressively.
When they come, yeah, no, we analyze, and also unfortunately, if they leave here and then get unemployment, could claim unemployment from another, like they get another big hire.
Job, but it comes back to us.
Yeah, so we really never, it's one of those things, we really don't ever, during COVID, we came up high, but we actually ended up getting it back, because they realized that they shouldn't have.
I just want to make sure that we are actively.
We always do, yeah, we
Okay.
get notification, we look into it, figure out what is going on, and then we file against it.
Okay.
So you may not know this answer off the top of your head, but 49 million does not seem like a lot of money. For like a county of this size, is that normal to have only 49 million for the whole county?
Yeah, I think that is not the whole picture.
Is it? Okay, because
This is a
49 million
county.
does not seem like a lot of money.
Well,
Like,
it's not. It's
Yeah.
not. Like, but we don't keep a lot of it either.
Yeah.
We still have federal funding.
okay, so we have something on top of, okay. Because I was like, I don't see how it could possibly
Our
work.
total budget is about 60 some.
That's still not that much,
It's
but it's
not,
better than
but-
49, okay. Because I was confused on how
We
49
have to,
could.
yeah, without, I mean, we run
So,
training
yeah.
most times. And we really do, for the amount of, 82% of our budget goes to personnel.
Yeah.
That, I mean, really, we run slim otherwise.
So there is at least something
There is
additional.
another thing, yeah. We'll get to that. They're not big numbers,
I know, but
but
still
we'll get to
also-
that, you'll see, yeah. You go ahead. This is just the second half, this is shows you the expense side of things. Gives you the reserve, and you can see my carryover at the bottom, and then the amount of the expenses that we are actually going to pay out of the county. Go ahead and go to the next one. Like I said, 82% is personnel related, so we're really working with an 18% other, everything else. I did break it out, so you can see out of that 18%, 24% is utilities, 16 is maintenance, and 31 is transportation. The carryover is high because, I think we were able to comfortably, I think, do the 5% reserve. So 2 million of that carryover is actually just set aside, sitting there, not offsetting actual expenses. But, I strongly believe we have that to carry over, so I think the 5% we can safely say that it's there. So, and that's what actually the state.
I mean, that just basically replaces the carryover that you've already using from the previous year. It just keeps your carry, or is this in addition
This
to?
just sets it aside, no, I mean, theoretically, the carryover should be about the same each year. You shouldn't
Right.
really, the reserve should be just that, a reserve for when something goes wrong. You really shouldn't have to touch that. So this is just, moving through, we had a fair carryover last year, even though I only budgeted for the 3% last year. So I can safely say that we'll have a 5 this year.
But what I'm getting at is like, we're starting with a carryover that we're building into our revenue, and then we're planning on having a 5% reserve. So in essence, so next year, we could start next year with a similar carryover that we stared this year with. Okay, we're not building the reserve to be
No, we're
even
not
bigger.
trying- The goal is not to build, like, we're not trying to make a profit, we're just trying to have a little nest egg in case something happens.
For the next year.
For the next year.
Yeah, okay.
We really would, we don't wanna dip into that, like, if we have that 5%, we really wanna hold on to that 5% as
I understand.
close to it.
I was just clarifying that.
Yeah. So there's the county budget in total, once again, the road excess levy. Okay, so the next is the special revenue fund. This would include, and this includes federal grants and state grants, and other specific projects. So we are getting money for a specific purpose, it goes into this. So we have another 7.4 million in revenue. So local sources, just grants, honestly. The state sources and the federal, there's your bulk. That's gonna be your titles, primarily, special ed, IDEA. And then that transfer that is actually from county to the bulk of it, the 550, is child nutrition to offset theoretically what they might need to make it a zero account at the end of the year. You can see where it's coming from, mainly federal. It has gone down a little bit. You can see it's gone down. Not a huge drop, but it's another enrollment-based funding. So we lose enrollment, it does come down. State would be kind of, we got like CTE is state funding. Some other grant systems like that. So the next one, here's the breakdown. With this per state requirement, we do not really budget it out too much. That is for the directors to do July 1st. My job is to make sure that the personnel that are in those grants are allocated for. So that is a hard number. But then beyond, and that's pretty much, that's what you're seeing. Everything up at the top is for personnel within those. The reserve is the excess money that they'll have to spend and rebudget, and actually budget, but we don't get those budget line items until July 1 when they have to submit their grant to the state. Just basically how it breaks out. Food service is kind of everything already though. It actually has a full budget based on estimated expenses from FY23. So it's actually that's how much we'll use. Everything else is just personnel. So you can go ahead to the next one. You can see the drops. Really nothing notable except for it's just we've lost some money in the big grants, which is where you're seeing that drop from. Like the Title I and the Title II, we've lost some money. But it is what it is. And then you can go to the next one. Here's the breakdown again. So this is, again, the supplies probably mainly from the actual child nutrition being already budgeted. The rest is the reserves. That's what they're going to have to work with. Unless I knew for a fact that they had something that they always budget out, but I don't. I just and service personnel. You can see the breakdown of that. It's an estimate, that's just, it's not the complete picture because you're not really seeing the full picture yet. And the next is just really where it tells you how you're supposed to budget for special revenue, since it is different than county money. You just don't budget for it the same way. And I will note, those numbers could change. Federal programs has been notorious for changing their allocation, for a variety of reasons. One, they don't have all the data yet to make that perfect. Also, charter schools affects that number. It's yet another place. Charter schools affects our state aid. We will actually have it gets reevaluated about October and then again in December. So it changes slightly, but it also affects our federal funding too, because it will go to them as well. Next is debt service, and this is the bond levy, and that's all it is. The Municipal Bond Commission tells us what we are to collect, and as you can see from the levy rate sheet, that's what we collect. And then, so you see the revenue, this is how it breaks out, and it's just to pay off the bond. So we've got a couple more years on that, but nothing. The bond construction, nothing going on there. We do have from where we refinanced back in 20, whenever COVID hit. We do have about 2.1 million sitting there, but right now it's just sitting there, can only be used for bond funded schools. And right now it's just sitting there until we make some.
Chair, based on our previous discussion, those would be for example, aspects of those bond projects that maybe were cut or reduced.
Yeah.
That would be a
yes,
potential
yes.
use of those funds,
Yeah,
correct?
so anything that happened at South, Central, West, Kingwood, Fellisville, Roseburg, Terrellton, and Brewston, they had partial bond funding. If there was anything that needed to be finished, or in addition to, that was in the original bond call, essentially, then you could use that.
What's the process on that? How are we going to go about allocating that, or what's the plan?
Really don't have a plan, like a specific plan. We need to analyze it once again. And since we have the levy money, which should be used within the year, like we don't want to keep that. This is really not being dictated by anything. This is, we have to spend it like right now. So it's something we're kind of sitting on until we feel that the project can be funded. Like a lot of the stuff that was cut are big projects. So we have to either determine if we want to just take people out of school or have enough of an offset somewhere else that we can use it for multiple schools. So it's really just, we'll analyze that at the beginning of the year. Right now, we've just had a lot going on. Otherwise, that it was best to hold on to this. Also, the SBA likes to have a kind of a reserve. So this has kind of been our slight reserve in case something would happen with what we've already done that we would need to expand on.
If it's used in a bond-related project, though, could that be used to leverage funds from the SBA?
No, not necessarily. Unless, if we wanted to do something within the original bond call and we can go hunt it down through SBA. SBA, a lot of our bond projects were SBA funded in relation to the bond. Like at West, we got $60 million from the SBA over 2 things plus the bond. So they do, but you have to. Those are more things where you really have to have your ducks in a row before you move forward with it. Okay. The next is the capital. And this is where we actually get SBA funding. Like this is where the funding would go.
but nothing's crossing over. We're not, I mean, we did get the new, SBA funding, but it was after I did this part, so it's not in here. It will be, as soon as that gets finalized and we get the final number and we get all the paperwork, then a project's set up within this fund specifically for that.
This would be like the Kingwood Elementary secure door.
And as soon as we get all like the official paperwork, then it will get set up in that fund.
So is that mostly an in and out? Like, the only way it comes in is if it's a grant or an award?
Yeah, a big grant. So, for example, the football field grant that we received, that went into that grant, that funding, that grant went into this funding line item. But it's stuff that you have a very specific purpose, is always to do some capital improvements of some sort, and then it's wiped out. You really, if there's any carryover, it's once again for that specific purpose. You don't really budget it, you actually have the star numbers in your hands.
Like the Trenton project, for example, out at the track.
Those are smaller projects.
Right.
So we didn't put it in the
Okay.
51. No. It had a project code, not GPO.
Any questions?
So the budget format, I'm sure, is set, the state tells you how you lay it out and all that kind of stuff. And we have to put certain amounts of it into the official pages into the newspaper.
Yes.
Do we have any leeway? Do we choose to put anything in there about like the places, like specifically noting the places that were going to hurt the most due to the failure of the levy?
What you put in the newspaper is the format that it is.
So it has to be the exact
This is
format that we're
dictated
submitting.
format
Yeah, from the state.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is- I fill
Yeah.
in the,
But we can't add a page to that.
no. I mean, you could, else I wouldn't do it at the same time, because really this is a formal notification.
Okay.
It's, legislator required, everything's very dictated how you do this. And
Yeah.
you could always do that,
Yeah.
but I would not do it at the same.
Okay, again, just looking at the benefit to the taxpayer for them seeing it as those that take time to view the big one already,
Now,
like it
I
already
will
gets their
say-
attention, so,
The budget report.
right.
Is on our website, has been on our website. I will put what I will call the final, reports up as well, once approved. But this does actually kind of go into some nuance on the levy and things of that nature. You can see historically some stuff and things like that within this document.
96 pages of it.
Yeah, 198.
98, Dr. remember? I must have missed
He
two.
missed that math class. Any other questions? Ms. Kerstetter, thank you. It is appreciated. So at this time, the motion has been properly moved and seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, there's no contract review. This time, it's information, report of the levy expenditures approved at the 5/13/24 meeting is posted in the public file section. Any questions on that? Next is schedule of checks to be written. This time, entertain a motion to approve the schedule of checks to be written.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Mr. Kisner. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
At this time, entertain a motion for the board to approve the budget journal entries 152 through 155.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, next is discussion information. Preston County Schools has been seeking a way to safely begin implementing AI technology for potential use for students and staff. The attached plan lays out the potential process of how the district hopes to carry out this initiative. Mr. Martin.
Mr. Huggins, this was on the agenda. We have pursued a contract with a vendor that could provide services that could be used for both students and staff, but we definitely wanted to do so with a rollout plan. Mrs. McDonald asked for this item to be placed on the agenda tonight, and I think she's prepared to briefly speak to it.
Basically, we can't avoid AI. It's here, and our students are already using it, so we're trying to get in front of it and kind of control it a little bit and prepare teachers to know what they're looking at, how to implement it safely, and to make sure that we have some tools in place to kind of control it a little bit. So this program that we're piloting right now is only available to teachers. I want to make sure that we have a lot more in place before we ever put this in front of students. But it gives our staff a lot of tools to help their instruction, to save time, and then the safeguards that it provides, it allows us to limit the kind of language being used in the chat, so it automatically will stop the program if you try to ask it a question that is triggered by any of the phrases that we enter into the system. It also blocks any kind of data from being sent, so that's a big concern with kids, telling the computer where they live, what their phone number is, who their parents are. Anything like that is triggered and not transmitted into the AI chat world. So that's another safeguard for kids. So basically, the plan right now, we're still in very early stages of this, but I wanted you to know where we are starting. The first step would be just to kind of test out the tool, see how it's working, let our staff use it, really as a time management strategy. And then stage 2 would be to select a pilot group of teachers who want to dig deeper, to go through a pretty rigorous training cycle of how to use this safely with students and kind of test it out, find out how what works well, what doesn't work well, and then develop a formal policy to make sure that we're prepared to use this kind of technology in classrooms. So tonight, I just want to see what kind of questions we have, what you guys would like us to see, or how you would like us to proceed as far as questions that need to be answered before students see this technology. Just kind of see where we are in this whole realm.
One of the things I'll start with, I watched a news story of using AI that really they used the face, but then they put it on nudity people and went throughout the school. So the one part I would suggest is make sure we have some kind of policy that if kids do this, the severity of it, because one of the things the news story pointed out, a lot of states don't have rules and regulations because it's such a new technology. I forget, I should have written down what state it was in, but it was just on the news last night, matter of fact. That's why it's so fresh to me. But there's state, and there's questions at the federal level as far as what's considered child pornography because of that, because the way the law's written. I mean, it's going to be something that you're going to have to touch base with legal people. Not my knowledge by any stretch, but that was something that it blew my mind last night, stuff I never thought about, because I don't know enough about it. But by that time you may have laws that say, you know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's one of the reasons we want not just to help our kids use the tool, but also to educate them, just like anything, of the positives and negatives. There's a lot of cool things you can do, and there's a lot of really creative ways that you can use this technology, and there's a lot of scary things you can do. It's just like in the building. If we teach our kids to use technology appropriately, they're going to use it regardless. So we want to be proactive in teaching them how to do it safely. And yeah, absolutely. So those are the kind of things that we need to work through before we have
One of the tools here is like a letter writer, like parent emails, recommendation letters and stuff. The one worry I have with using all this in AI, it takes away kind of the authenticity of a lot of the things. So like, I understand using it for like assignments or like if you need a quick bell ringer and things like that, but like, I feel like some of these tools would be like replacing teachers in a sense, like their lesson plans. So that I think teachers, it's important for their job in their classroom should be their own ideas and their own thoughts. And so it just makes me a little worried that like some of these tools would include like personal things, like a letter writer or a lesson plan builder. Like I feel like there should be a little bit of like, not like overuse of this, should definitely be focused on. Just as someone like I don't think I'd like to get a letter that's AI written, because now you can tell when something's AI written for the most part. It's pretty wooden, it's pretty like the thing like that. So I think that's definitely something you guys should look into, is that we don't overuse it to the point that like, it feels like we are being taught by robots. It's like, it should be definitely used as a tool and not as a replacement.
It was interesting, Margo, that when we were trained on, one of the training activities they did, they provided us with a series of written prompts, and you needed to try to determine, was this AI developed or was it human developed? And there were sometimes, I agree with you, sometimes it was very obvious. There were others that it was surprising. I mean, that whole process was a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it, and I mean, I've started using it a little bit myself, and what I find is I'll generate something and then I'll change probably 50 to 60% of it by the time it's done. So it's a really good starting off point. It gives you like a baseline, and then I just kind of chip away at replacing stuff, adding more personal comments, things like that. The lesson planning doesn't really worry me as much, because that is how a teacher's going to translate that to instruction.
Yeah.
That's not something a kid will ever see. But I think there's definitely an education piece there about communication. For
Yeah,
sure.
and like this is an outline, not your essay.
Yeah,
Like, that's
like
the biggest
I
thing.
used it to make, I didn't end up using the letter, but I said, make me a letter about the importance of reading over the summer. And it had statistics that were correct. It just pulled in a whole bunch of things that just made my letter writing process a lot faster. I still ended up changing a whole bunch of it. Of course, I had to make it fit what we were doing here in Preston County, which is different than the computer generated version. Really, for me personally, as a very new user of some of these tools, it just, that part where I sit and look at a blank screen and just like trying to get out everything that I'm trying to say, it's a good starting place for that work.
So speaking to that, and I understand what you're saying and how it would be used, and I think you using this tool could be very different based on your experience level and your education and where you are in your life versus, say, somebody that's younger or newer, less experienced, if you will. Could there be a disclaimer, like say for that letter that you wrote out, if you use AI to get yourself started and you change 50% of it, should there be a works consulted page that says AI was consulted in generating a portion of this letter? So that what worries me more is somebody uses AI to write the letter and it's not really your thoughts or your recommendations, but it's some unknown computer's recommendation. That concerns me.
Yeah.
So that the reader thinks that, oh, Ms. McDonald said all of this, where actually, Ms. McDonald is agreeing with it or putting it out there, but it's not 100% your original creation.
Right, and I know the State Department's working through a lot of those issues. This is very new, but it's happening very fast.
Yeah.
So those are a lot of things that we need to answer. I mean, we can absolutely talk about some kind of disclaimer for anything a teacher produces that has any AI in it, absolutely. We can talk about, I wouldn't want any educator to put anything out that wasn't seriously heavily edited and vetted
But
after it was created.
But even for that letter that you wrote, if you're quoting statistics, hopefully those sources would be cited within it of where those statistics come from. So I think within the realm of academia, we're used to citing other people's ideas.
Right.
So this is just bringing it current to this technology.
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely something we'll have to look at, how we do that appropriately and professionally.
But there's no source to cite. I'm going to give you 3 predictions as somebody with a computer science degree and a background. 3 to 5 years from now, what we refer to as artificial intelligence right now will not even be considered a predecessor of any true artificial intelligence that ever occurs. Two, 3 to 5, maybe 10 years from now, companies are going to start the same way that we are all of a sudden, artificial food colorings are the worst thing in the world. Companies are going to be advertising, we don't use artificial intelligence in this because it is going to have such a bad reputation. And number three, your teacher's problem is going to be when a student turns in something that you can't prove the citations on, eventually it will be so problematic that no teacher will be able to accuse a student of plagiarizing or not doing the work because there will be zero ability to tell what percentage is their work and what percentage is the other. Now with those predictions, I've said this before, I don't even like calling it AI, it's not. What we're referring to has no place in an academic. It is not, it was producing pictures of Black George Washington with the intentional intent of having an input bias. It wasn't meant to be academic. It's meant to be something that shortens a workload or creates a shortcut. I don't see how we can put something that has no academic value as something that we want to enforce. I mean, if we're gonna offer a class on the dangers of using it, on how to use it, like there's an academic value potentially, but even that, it has an intentional skewed bias in its results. I mean,
Yeah, exactly, and to add on to that as well, like, I feel like sitting in front of your computer screen with a blank document and like knowing how to start anything is something we should be learning in school. Like we are like one of our biggest things, we have literacy discussion, and we say like we want our kids to be more literate. We have a third grade plan, and if we start giving them tools that like gives them an outline already, then they need to like that. Like part of the thing is like you need to be able to like look at a blank document because like teachers, I think it's a fantastic tool. Like that's like super smart. They have so much work to do. It'd be so nice to like have their bell ringers done. Like there's a lot of time they look them up anyways. But for students, if this becomes like I don't know, is this like what was the name, like a quiz builder, like that type of stuff, if that then translates to like make me an outline for a study guide or something like that, kids would then no longer know how to make their own study guide. Like that's the thing I worry if this becomes a chat for schools is also for students within those schools. They're not going to be able to look at a blank document and start their own essay anymore because they're just going to use it. So like, I'm just confused. Will this then, all this stuff only be for teachers, or will then it translate to students? Like the students will also have access to stuff to then make.
So it does have a student component. My concern of saying there's no place for AI for our students is that they will use it.
Yeah.
And I would rather teach them how to use it appropriately and how to use it with integrity than to just say we're not going to use
To
it.
turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah, they will use it.
so I can subscribe to that. If you want to offer a course on how to use it, the dangers of using it, the warnings of using it, like here's the things to watch out for, to understand what's behind it. That's a whole different thing than allowing students to use it as a resource, right? Or allowing them to use it for an assignment or for help, like in the system. Like those are two entirely different. Is all I'm trying to say is. Yes, if you want to offer, I'll be right behind. If you want to offer a course on how to use it, how to understand it, understand the risks, understand that this is not a source that you can cite. Number one, you can't ever reproduce it. If you cite, I use this AI generated thing, nobody can ever reproduce what you did because every time you put that prompt in, you are going to get a different answer. So there's no way to prove what was plagiarized and not. Now you can say, well, this level of work was at a higher caliber than the student's other level of work has ever been. But again, what is that teacher going to do with that? How do they figure out what percentage? How do they, if part of it, do you give them partial credit? Do you give them zero? Now you have to have that argument with the parent. Now you have to prove it. Like, so again, my opposition is allowing students to use it as any type of a resource for anything, to cite it, to allow it to be used in the research, be allowed to use it. If you want to offer a course in its benefits, I won't even not just in a negative. I'm not saying it doesn't have some benefits.
Can I jump in here really quick? I think regardless, even if we do what you're saying, that we have the course of telling you the good, the bad, the ugly of it, if we say that there's no place for AI in the classroom and we don't do something like this, students could still use AI and we'd have the same problems and challenges that you're identifying. That by us not going down this lines, we don't solve the problem that you're putting out there. The problem that you're putting out there is here regardless, because that technology is available on every single student's phone, or if a student has a laptop that's not a school-owned laptop, they could write a paper on their own device at home and create all the problems that you're identifying. So I think what Ms. McDonald's talking about doesn't is separate from what you're saying. That'd be my first thing. And I think there is a ways around that. Like if a teacher wants it to be original, authentic, creative ideas from the student, there's a simple solution. You pass out pen and paper to the student, and you just, I'm serious. There's no computer. We're going to handwrite this out, make your outline, and turn it in pen and paper and grade it. And don't use technology. I think just because we have a device for every student doesn't mean that we have to use that device for everything. Would be my first comment. And then lastly, I do feel like there's beneficial uses of this in the workplace, and we should train students on how to actively use it. Because I know for our company, we are using it because our employees don't have time to draft every single letter. And so if one of my employees, and I think any company around here that did the same thing that you did of, hey, generate a letter, and then I change part of it to make it specific, that's totally acceptable and probably in the best economic desires of a company. And so we should be preparing our students to do that.
And I think this program, though, doesn't necessarily allow for unfettered use. I mean, it's almost like it's providing the kids to use it in a safer, more controlled setting, to better learn the proper application of the technology.
Yeah, I mean, this system allows us to have a lot of control. I mean, we
Right.
can shut up an individual, student forever. And they would, it's very, a lot of work study. The way they, one of the things, of course, you don't want a student to take a computerized test and have their AI helper next to them. So you just press a button and it's off. Like, no kid has access to it. We can control that on our own computers.
Just like we can turn it off completely on all of our computers. So to Mr. Tatham's point, yes, they may have access to something, but in their own private realm, but we can block this from every school computer. Number one, this is also, if I understand correctly, this is asking for funding, right? Like, there'll be something, we're going to pay for this. Like, we're going to take dollars out of a budget to support a concept that I'm saying is uneducational in value. And I'm saying it. I'm not saying that you agree with that, but that my point is, again, our main purpose is education. Now, again, so just saying, like, we do have some control. Also, there is the expectation, just like when we talked about AI in the previous policy, once you allow for it, there's an amount of endorsement. There is an amount of somebody saying, right, the parent saying, well, this is a positive thing, or the student looking at it as it's a positive tool. You had an accounting degree. I mean, if you remember, like, what opens up the possibility of fraud, which is what this is going to lead to, right? But the likelihood of getting away from it and the easeability are two of those factors. Opening up to this opens up to a lot of easeability of fraud in student work.
But what I'm saying is that you have that opportunity right now, because if students have access to internet, they have access to AI currently. Right? I mean, to our students here, I mean, you could use this currently, whether we do something or
You're
not.
saying on their computer in their home, where it is not under where we didn't pay for it, we didn't encourage it. Yes, because our policy currently allows for it. If we say that our policy, if we change our other policy that does not allow for it in any way, shape, or form, if they do it, they would immediately be breaking a rule.
Right, and then we would have to enforce that. We would have to investigate it on a case-by-case basis, and then we would have to spend the resources, and then we would have to enforce that rule.
Right.
With it. If that means failing a student, holding them back, et cetera, we would have to do it.
Right.
And that's really what I was bringing up, because the school system had no policy. So the school system, it's a mess. I can't remember if it was on CBS or NBC, because I watched both of them last night. But they had the story, because the school system, if you don't have a policy, you're closing your eyes, and we're probably going to be in more trouble.
But the policy could have been it's not allowed.
But then you have to enforce that.
That is correct.
With every single situation.
That is correct. The same as we do with vaping, the same as we do with fights, the same as we do all the other things that students have
But I
access to.
think they're
right?
massively different in proportion of scale.
And the one thing I will say about this program and all the programs I would assume that are designed for AI in schools, we will be able to see every single type entry from any person in our system, student or teacher, that uses this program. So I could go in and see, Mr. Martin could go in and see everything I put into my chat already, because it's because that's the way the system works.
If they're working within this platform.
It's like Remind 101. Like,
If somebody goes to look at the history of
state-
5,000 people, yes, right.
But it would be the responsibility of every single teacher to monitor, like, that's part of this plan, is that a teacher would not be able to use this with students unless they've done the work to know how to control that. So they, like, if they would have to sign on to do that work. This would not be, and we've talked at length about what this could look like. There's no world where we just open this up on Clever like we do already. I mean,
So as a teacher, if I didn't want to use it, I don't have to.
exactly,
And I can't use it unless I'm trained to use it.
correct.
That makes sense.
So.
And then building off of that, if the teacher does use it, then I feel they should have to disclose that they've used it, and maybe that could even be a conversation of, here's how I used it.
Yeah, and we're hoping to use that to be you know.
But what I'm getting at is that the teacher has to disclose that they've used it. So in your case, you would say, I used this to help generate the beginning of the letter, but then I changed the letter. And then that could be independently verified by a different person of saying, okay, Johnny said he did not use it. He never disclosed beforehand that he used AI, but then we check, the supervisor checks, and they found out that actually Johnny did use it to write that letter. Then they would be violating the policy.
Yeah, I think
Because they didn't
especially
disclose it.
From a teacher standpoint, if we're gonna have our teachers, you know, using the tool to produce things, that disclosure I think is important, absolutely.
Okay, speaking on staff now, have you talked to the teachers and like building administration and people who will be the first ones to use this? Or is this like something like they've asked you to look into, or is this like a county thing that you want to work into the school system?
So, it's a hot topic in education everywhere you go. So it's coming up on, I mean, the state's talking about it now, and they're very excited about using this well and get counties on board with not just saying we're not gonna use this at all, but talking about how to do it effectively. We spoke to our principals about it, and said, this is kind of what we're thinking, how do you guys feel about it? And they had a lot of the same concerns as you guys. I mean, everybody has questions and everybody has worries about it. So, we've just barely begun those conversations.
And I think even though in our initial professional development activities last summer, like Mrs. Liga, who's in attendance here, I think just did some preliminary ChatGPT, just some informational sessions am I correct in that, Mrs. Liga?
Yeah, and I mean, the kinds of things that I've looked at with teachers, I'm like I said, very, very new to this. Like, we asked it to come up with some discussion questions from a chapter of a book. That way the teacher can kind of preload that work instead of having to read every second of the book before the teachers read it. Like, especially if she's trying to do 5 different novels with 5 different groups of kids in her class at the same time. Those are the kind of things that they're doing to save time, saying, hey, can you give me 10 questions for chapter 1 of this book? It's not that the teacher doesn't need to have complete understanding of what she's doing, it just really saves a lot of time.
So that's a really good teacher example. Can you give like a more concrete student example of using it? Because I'm kind of lost on like how the student would use it.
So that's a good question. I haven't done any of this with students, and in our conversations about it, I've been very much like, we have a long way to go before we can do it with students, because we have to talk about what's the scope of the work here. But one of the things that this particular program has is what they call tutors, and the teacher feeds the information to the tutor. It says, the teacher sets it up, says the tutor is, let's say the tutor is George Washington, and the student will say, hello, and the teacher has already said what the tutor's going to say. The tutor's going to start with, hello, I'm George Washington. I'm the first president of the United States. Do you have any questions for me today? And then the student can say,
What's your birthday?
What's your birthday? Exactly. And the teacher could give the student either a list of questions, go talk to this tutor and see if you can figure these things out. The better way to do it would be to have the student kind of write about their experience, and if they got to see the real George Washington, like, what did they think that would be like? You know, use it kind of as a starter, as a curiosity thing, and then the student can go write an essay about my dinner with George Washington, and it's a fictional story. You know, like, it's kind of more of like a creativity booster, things like that. I'm sure Michelle's done a lot more with it. I can give you a lot more specifics on what students could do. I feel like we're far away from putting it in front of students. This is kind of a very first step of getting ourselves ready for this. But that, that's kind of where I am. There's also a lot of design things with AI, like you can, I know Canva is something that a lot of our staff uses, and AI is already built into that program, where you can go in and say, this is my content, you put it in a very, black and white bulleted list, and you ask it to turn your bullets into, like, bell ringers, for example. Like, here's my bell ringers, turn it into a PowerPoint with 1 slide a day. Boom, like that. You've got a PowerPoint that has all of your stuff split slide by slide. The teacher puts it on the board, and every day she's got her slide ready to go, and she doesn't have to do the work of making a PowerPoint. So there's a lot of things like that the students would also be able to do, given the right parameters and saying, okay, we're going to build something here. Your job is to come up with the content, and then let's play around with this cool tool to make it look nice. Some things like that. But I'm far away from. I would like to have a much more in-depth presentation of what this looks like in a classroom before we get anywhere close to doing that.
It's just an informational thing, so.
Yes.
Would you allow a student to cite a comic book on the crime of New York City? And I think we all agree no. Even if you reject my general premise about the tool, it's not academic. It's essentially saying that any Google result can be used could be used in your paper, because that's all. It's a big Google that's able to make sentences instead of just point to sites. Like, a student using this for an academic paper is getting information that's not validated as being academic. Like, it's just taking whatever answer it gets most and summarizing that and rounding that off in a very basic level. So I'm just saying, like, to allow students to use it is again putting a comic book in equivalency with an encyclopedia to an extent. That's not an exact, but I mean, like, it's that same type of thing for allowing it to be used as a resource. It's been given no proof of being of these two writers being of equal value, especially if there's 99 other writers, and we all know how many writers are on the internet, but 99 other writers that agree with this guy, giving their results that escalation. That's my concern. Like, that's my concern.
It's fair concern. Again, that's what tonight is discussion, is to see what's there. I don't expect answers, but there's a lot of me agrees with what you're saying. Go ahead.
Okay, I just got a couple here real fast. So you keep talking about how, staring at the blank screen and kids getting the jump start or whatever. I've been there, done that, looked at my screen plenty of times. But what I think, especially if we're in a classroom sense, and they have to write this article on George Washington or whatever, I think at some point, it's also important that we put, 5 kids around at a desk in a room and say, okay, talk about it. What can we pull from each other before we go pulling from an internet source? I feel like if we're gonna, we've already pushed for textbooks back in the classroom. If we're gonna push for textbooks, then why aren't we having kids sit around helping each other instead of going to an AI that doesn't know anything about this kid to help tutor them?
Right. I mean, this tool would not replace quality instruction.
Right. No, and that's not what I don't
Like,
understand.
this tool would not. I mean, would not replace any high quality best practices our teachers do.
Right. Okay. I understand. So if that's what we're doing, then do you see what I mean? Like, if
It's
we're
a
going to
valid
set
statement.
a student down, and as you say, if they're going to sit down and do this tutor, why are we having that tutor? Do you see what I mean?
I think it comes back to the main reason to do this. I mean, you could tell me, you could tell me to change courses. I got plenty to do. The main reason to look at this is because our jobs are to prepare kids for the future and for being in the workplace, and this is what's there. I mean, not every workplace, not every situation, but a lot of them. It's becoming more and more prevalent. This is what our kids are going to see. This is what it's out there already. They already have access to it. I think it's our job to provide some education and to support them in using it well and using it safely. That's the main reason to look at this. It's not to replace strategies that already work. It's not to substitute high-quality sources and learning materials. It's to expose them to a new technology that's out there, just like we did with laptops. At some point we decided we needed to put every kid in front of a computer because they're going to have to be able to use Word and Excel and type. Like, at some point we had to make that decision, and I think I'd like to see us on the front end of this decision instead of on the back end.
I mean, my personal opinion on it is that from a student standpoint, from elementary up through, say, middle school, early middle school, students should be doing as much in-person, book, paper, human, face-to-face, and as little technology as possible, and technology only be used as a form of transmission, that if they need to do a test and the test is online instead of pen and paper and a bubble sheet, et cetera, but that we create these fundamentals of teaching kids to read with actual printed paper and a human doing it through our elementary ages. And when students get up to middle high school and middle high school, and they're already a thinking adult that knows how to create original ideas and where information comes from, then this is a tool that they start using, because they will be using it when they go on to life, and they need to know how to do that. That would be my personal assessment of how I would do it with students. With adults, with our employees, I personally feel like our employees should have a platform that we can monitor and control to a certain degree with a program like this, because I think that employees are going to do it elsewhere if we don't provide a medium that we cannot see.
Yeah, and if they're using something that doesn't have any control, student or individual data could get slipped through, and we don't have a record of what they're doing necessarily. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and I think choosing when a student is introduced to this is a huge part of this process, and we haven't even begun to discuss when that would happen. I think high school would be a very appropriate place to start, looking when these students do have a lot of these previous foundational skills.
Mr. Manka, you said you had two questions.
Yeah, I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
have one more. Well, it's not really, but I think what we also need to think about as we're moving forward with this is a parent response to them hearing AI implemented into the classroom.
That's a good point,
So
too.
I feel like if we're even gonna start this, if teachers are even gonna have the opportunity to have access to this, as a county, something very official, very cut and dry, this is what is being used for, needs to be put out. Because, I can tell you now, like, if I go home and I tell my parents that, AI is being used in the classroom, they're not gonna be all hoot, hollering bells. And, it's not that they're opposed to it, but I think they just wanna know the extent of what it's being used in my education.
That's a fair question.
And I agree with that, but I mean, to some degree, AI is already being used in your classroom through iReady, right? I mean, iReady is taking quizzes that a student has done, answers that you do here, determines if they're if they're doing the whatever's called the pathway type of a thing. That's some form of AI, where it's taking information that you've done here as a student as a lesson, and
Right.
Most of
right?
your search engines have AI,
Well,
it's,
the other thing about the teachers versus students, we trust our teachers to choose the resources that they need to teach our students the standards. So this is just another tool to do that. I think it would be exactly the same as a teacher being held responsible for the teacher that they buy. If they buy a bad one, they're responsible for that. If they buy something that doesn't support our standards, they're responsible for that. I think that would be the same thing as using a tool and not vetting it, whatever it shoots out, to vet it to make sure it's what's best for our kids and for their instruction. I think that we have to, I think it's the same as any other resource in the teacher regard, that they are responsible for what they use in their instruction and making sure it's what's best for kids, and it does accomplish the learning goals that we're trying for here.
Would it be possible, I don't know if it's true, but would it be possible to make this only available on the school Wi-Fi? The same way that I can't log in with my school login on any random I couldn't go onto my mom's Outlook computer and sign up my Outlook stuff because it isn't a Preston County device. Would it be possible to make this only work on Preston County School's Wi-Fi or a Preston County school server? Only
Like
way
through
is,
Clever, like it blocks it through Clever.
yeah, like if I were to go on my home Sorbonne Wi-Fi, would this AI still work? And have that not be possible? Is that
I don't know the answer. I know that we can restrict time of day.
Yeah.
Of course, I could restrict it to the time of day of the school day. Of course, if a student was, homesick, I couldn't know that and turn it off. But I'm not sure about the Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because I feel like I think it's gonna be a great tool with a lot of supervision because, even just having devices in the classroom, I think Colson can attest to this, it opens up the door to a lot more cheating, a lot more academic fraud, a lot less academic integrity. Literally just having GoGuardian, even with it being GoGuardian, even with that, just having a Google search engine here where I'm allowed to have it out and I'm not sneaking in on my phone opens up a lot more things. So as Mr. Kisner said, I think it opens up a lot more, whereas I do agree that this is important to use and that we get like on top of things in the future. I'm just wondering if there is a way to restrict it to being in the school building, because as soon as you're let it outside the school building, I mean, you can go back and check their log history, but I don't know if we want to do that for 5,000 students. So like at 11:35 p.m., if I'm, oh my gosh, I forgot to write this essay, if I say, give me an essay, I change 2 words to put it in, unless you specifically go back and check all the way back at this exact time on a random day, you won't know that I did that. Because I do agree that like they'll be able to monitor within school. Outside of school, they're not going to be checking it constantly. They're not going to have it up in their classroom computer.
Right, but I, as the teacher, would look at your essay and say, are we sure? And then I would log into your chat and see that you had searched right minds.
Yeah, but like in the off chance that you couldn't tell or for something like that, like it just opens up a lot more if it's allowed outside of school.
I agree, but again, on your cell phone, I mean, it's gonna happen. So I think our teachers need to get ready for it, because regardless of what we do and what we decide, that is gonna happen. And we're gonna have to figure out how to support them through that.
You know, years ago, they put a computer in the school. I was in high school. And I remember thinking, that's never going to go. And the reason I'm saying is that's how times change. A lot of the concerns I agree with. Mr. Kisner points, I agree. But if we don't prepare, we're going to be in trouble if we don't have some type of a policy. Because that computer did succeed, and now I'd have to pay somebody to carry it out. Now, if you happen to have that computer and all the boxes, you probably have some money. But you understand my point, because I can remember in high school teachers saying, that'll never go. That is never going to happen. And like it or not, it did. So, okay.
Just keep in mind though, again, those are 2 separate discussions. Whether we're training how to use it or whether we're allowed to use it as a tool for doing our work. Like, those are 2 completely different things. And again, training how to use it, preparing our kids for tomorrow, I'm all for it. I don't know why we don't have typing classes. Like, I have no problem with teaching. I know that I keep on pushing on paper textbooks and get back to but again, I love computers. I work on them. I've got no opposition, got several of them in my home. Like, that is not where my concern is at. But training somebody with a skill on how to use something is a different conversation than encouraging its use as a cited source. The other thing is, keep in mind, everything that's offered here, all these safeguards, everything that's here, right? So that all of this monitoring, everything is only for this tool that we're going, that we would be spending money on, right? But a student takes that, creates some product with this tool, or gets some amount of resources from this tool, and then they can go, like Mr. Tatham has pointed out, to their other tool, their other AI resource on their other personal computer, plug that in and say, take these resources and create this with that, right? Like, so, like, it does, we only will be able to monitor. You're also not gonna, I don't believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is only gonna monitor their inputs. Their output, we're not gonna know. We're not gonna have those results. So if they say, if their prompt is, tell me about George Washington's teen years, right? And it gives them that data. We don't know what they got as a response.
No, yes, we have a record of every single communication to and from the system.
Okay, and they store that? Okay, I mean, you're talking huge data, so I don't know, how long do they store that for? I mean, you'd be
I don't
talking
know.
enormous amounts of data in storage capacity, like beyond what, I mean, I don't even know how you would take 1 month's worth of 4,000 students of that kind of data.
I can ask him, but that's part of the product, that we can see the full conversation at any given time. And even flat, if a student says anything concerning, like,
How to build a bomb.
yeah, anything to do with any kind of violence, or even just any kind of sad emotion, like, I'm lonely, can you talk to me? We get an immediate alert that kind of conversation is happening, and then we can see the entire conversation. And at that point, the AI stops talking and says, we're done, and pings the teacher. So, I mean, it is very, very highly controlled. Again, I can't say that the concerns aren't valid, they absolutely are. I just think that we have to talk about, we can't just pretend, we can't just say we're not doing this, we're not going there, because we will go there, whether it's our way, or, you know, it's gonna
I just
happen.
have one more last thing.
But I appreciate it. I do reject that statement as a fallacy and a bad sell. That is not, I would argue that is not factual. Like, to say that we don't have a choice in allowing it in the system. Like,
I'm not saying we don't have a choice in allowing it in the system, I'm saying our kids and teachers will use it. They will use it, and
Right.
we have to figure out what our
right.
role in that is.
And if you completely say that it is off limits, then you have a repercussion. If you allow any percentage of it, I can assure you, there'll be no monitoring of it, other than profanity or how to build a bomb or these trigger things. There'll be absolutely no, once it's in, there's not gonna be any way. Like, again, the terabytes and terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data for somebody to have to go through to monitor. I mean, like, even their sales pitch on that monitoring is,
So for me, my comment would be is I do feel that you should put some time and energy, because you have a finite amount of energy to focus on. I do feel that some portion of that should go into this, because I do feel like it impacts your job area, and that's curriculum. But with that being said, I personally don't want it to take away from what I perceive to be your top priority, and that is literacy and numeracy and getting students to use the resources that we've done and keep plowing ahead with those objectives, because that's first and foremost. But as you and the superintendent can budget your time, because it's limited, so that you don't burn out by doing more than you can do, I think this is a secondary issue, but we should be at the forefront and doing what you're doing. And I think then it comes down to how much does it cost and at what cost? Like, what do we have to give up? If we do this, what do we have to give up? And then make that decision in the future. But personally, I thank you for educating yourself and including us in the conversation in an early point with it.
Absolutely. I guess my only question is what's next? You know, when do you want to hear from me again? Do you want a more serious presentation next about what using it would look like? I mean,
I think you
For
need to
example, could you want
explore.
us to make even an arrangement for like
Yeah, I
a
think-
brief presentation?
yes, like they will present, Ms. Liga has presentations on AI, like we can dig deeper.
I think you need to continue to investigate, and then, of course, I'm not going to be here, but I would then suggest, in the first part of, probably in July-ish area, give you time to come back. You may not be ready, and talk to Mr. Martin to be back on the agenda to present. Because at this point, what you're doing is just giving ideas. It's not like we're voting on anything. So I think that's what the next step would be, is to get organized, take some of the concerns that was listed tonight. I think there's several. Talk to the company, get your presentation ready, and then get asked to be back on the agenda, and do it in a formal presentation.
And for me, I would like to hear from the school curriculum team, starting with the high school. I'd like to hear from the English faculty, the history faculty, the staff, the employees that are going to be seeing this and using it, and hear their concerns. Like from an English teacher, how do they think that it can or cannot be used? And if middle school should be involved in that process, but from the employees that are going to be the ones that deal with it on a daily basis, and hear what they say. And then what's the dollars and cents? I mean, if that can be added too.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate you.
thank you.
And you always make us have a long discussion. That was to make you smile, so. Okay, moving on, there's no educational leave. There is one. Next on the agenda, entertain a motion for the board to approve the following out-of-school field trips for PHS. It's also out of state. Preston High School to the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium, and Incline on May 29th, 2024.
I think Mrs. Varner had contacted board members about this specific trip.
But it's still on the board thing to
Yeah.
do. So I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Who's
Voting is
going,
open.
Who's going, Mr. Martin?
We are interactive. Interact is.
Interact? Okay, I just was curious like who it was.
So these two are telling you, Mr. Kisner, you're voting yes.
I just voted no once they said that.
Yeah, we're going. So.
Motion passes 4-0.
Yeah, we're leaving now in 10 hours, so I have to get the approved.
Okay, there's no chaperone list. There's no out-of-state professional meetings. Ongoing literacy, there's nothing new. Next, superintendent's report.
Okay. Board members, you should have in your packets, this was actually a copy of last week's update. Just as a series of events, obviously last week was an important week at Preston High School with the CT Awards Banquet last Monday, the Senior Awards Banquet, which I believe, and at the CT, I believe there was approximately 160 students who were considered as completers. The awards banquet, I believe over $2 million in scholarship dollars. Very great events in terms of seeing these students being successful during the course of their 12th grade year. Of course, graduation proceeded on Friday. We appreciate the board members' attendance to that event as well. Some of the other, obviously, things coming up. Of course, we have our meeting tonight. We have parent-teacher conference day. Tomorrow will be the last day for 200-day staff if they did not finish up today. Some have parent-teacher conference commitments that they'll have to work tomorrow. We have a next scheduled board meeting on June 10th. Board members, I would ask for on the next agenda, I will put on there for consideration for a movement of the meeting that would be scheduled for June 20, I should say June 24th, I believe. We may need to move that to Thursday, the 27th, and the fact that both Mrs. Varner and myself will be at the Model Schools Conference. Mrs. Varner would not be back by Thursday, but I would be back unless there's some delay in my flight that would restrict me from getting back in time. So I'll make sure to have that placed on the next agenda. I would mention the Golden Horseshoe winners. Of course, they were recognized earlier this evening. Let's look here. Anything else we want to bring forth? I did want to call to attention that actually some of the student athletes from the state track meet from Preston High School will be at our next meeting. I've already contacted the track coaches. The track team had a very successful meet in Charleston back in earlier in May. We actually had another state champion. Ella White, of course, was the 400-meter state champion. We had multiple student athletes qualify for all-state status. Particularly on the girls' side, but just a tremendous year for the track and field team and continued success by several of those student athletes. Did want to call to attention the end-of-year staff survey. This was basically a school and county-based needs assessment. Certainly data derived from this will be utilized, as I mentioned to our board members earlier. There'll be elements of some of the stated goals I had within my goal-setting session back earlier in the year that some of this data would certainly be pertinent. So I appreciate Mrs. McDonald's efforts in working with a new vendor, Qualtrics, to put together the survey. And Katie, your experiences thus far in working with Qualtrics, I mean, they were able to synthesize this data, and really I think it's given us a lot more flexibility than what we've seen with previous tools that we've used.
Yeah, we were able to sort all the data by school, by grade level. It's going to be.
Yep, so.
We have 1,622.
I did one last hard push today and said, get them all done before you check them out. So. Yeah. Okay. There was also a letter that was notifying employees of the new dental and vision coverages. This was included in there with the caveat that they were planning to make any changes, the process involved in terms of making contact with the finance office for any prospective changes to our policy and plans. In terms of my general update, I would want to advise that Mr. Seymour and I did receive a response back from the WVS-SAC review board related to PHS's appeal to their athletic classification. The review board remanded the matter back to the WVS-SAC board of directors. So not that the situation has been overturned, but I've actually provided, and board members, you can look at that at your leisure. I'm not going to read through it line by line, but the response from the team does indicate that there's a feeling that, I think some of the points that we were trying to make, I think were accepted. I mean, Preston High was actually referenced in multiple sections of the report that was sent back. I think to try to reinforce some of the things that, some of the points made that I felt that the team was recognizing as legitimate points of concern. So we're excited about the possibility. Mr. Seymour, I believe there's an emergency meeting of the review board on June 11th, I believe is correct. And you're planning to meet with members of the Fighting Nine tomorrow at 1. Yes. So. Yeah. So again, board members, the copy of that response is in your packets. I'll allow you to review that at your leisure. Interior and exterior concrete work on the CT retail store is now complete. Obviously, it's going to be maintenance objective to get the facility insulated and to get a needed cabling or electrical considerations, and any interior work with the intent to have the facility open for the start of the next academic year. Mr. Murray is reporting the removal of the gym bleachers should take place this week with vendor H.L. Huffman. And I think, Colson, that was a question of yours. So that work should be proceeding late in the week. Then next week, we have the vendor firm who's coming in that will be doing the floor renovations at 6 targeted schools. There is some discussion as to, and I know Mr. Seymour, there was concern, in dealing with H.L. Huffman, they felt like it was not a significant point of concern to go ahead and get the floor completed with the installation process. So depending upon time, I think that is a possibility that they'll go ahead and get that floor because we have a finite amount of time when those crews are going to be available in the county. Yes, go ahead.
Will the bleachers be ready by school?
Yes. From what I understood, Margot, my discussion with H.L. Huffman, really once they start the installation, I wouldn't imagine more than a week and a half, 2 weeks.
So more like the theater than the doors?
Yes, for sure. It's a good point there, Margot. Parking lot ceiling and lining work at PHS, Brewston, Terre and Aurora will also be ongoing this month. I know that Mr. Murray was meeting with the rep with, I think it's I can't remember the name of the firm, it's Mr. Osborne, to set up scheduling times. I know with the PHS ceiling work, that's going to definitely have to be done in phases because of the fact that you have so many personnel that are continuing to be up here throughout the course of the summer. You're not going to be able to block off everything. So they'll be done. It'll be up here. It'll be done in segments. But the intent will be to get that work done at all of the sites prior to the 24th when summer school starts. Summer school will be running from 6:24 to 8:02. Ms. McDonald, time, is it 8 to, is it 1 o'clock? 8 to 1. That's what I thought. I was going to put it in there. I wasn't absolutely sure, so I didn't want to put anything that was incorrect. Enrollment has been targeting students demonstrating learning gaps and deficits. Ms. McDonald, in terms of total numbers, probably our largest site is the Terre Aurora site.
Our largest is West Preston, they're at 35.
Which that's pulling west, Fellows,ville, South Preston.
Yeah, and then Brewston is at about 24. We have almost all of our slots full.
Good.
We only have a few slots open right now, and we still have a couple of people putting in forms last minute, so I anticipate we'll pretty much fill up.
Which, we had some initial concerns. It was they were trickling in, but those numbers have definitely spiked up here within the last week or so for sure. Energy Express will be operating at PHS, and they actually have a little bit different time frame. They'll start on the 17th and run through July 26th, and they're able to utilize the Kingwood area busing for that site as well, which that will also be housed at Preston High. The culinary and wellness camps, and I apologize, that is not at Central Preston. That will be at Preston High School, correct? So board members, my mistake. Okay, I thought that was right. I wanted to make sure I didn't put that in wrong. Okay. So that will actually be utilized at Central Preston. That's designed for grades 5 through 8. I actually included some of the flyers, informational in there for the board's review.
We actually filled the culinary camp. We have 30 students.
It's great.
I'm ecstatic about that because this is something new. We didn't know we would get really good numbers.
And hopefully that'll get some prospective kids interested for the culinary program at the high school as well as they move in for a potential CT. Summer reading programs will take place this summer at Aurora, West, Terre Brewston, and PHS, which will be serve as the Kingwood area. That'll be 1 day a week. Most sessions, it will either be Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And what's Aurora doing?
They're doing Tuesday.
They're doing Tuesday. So either Tuesday or Wednesdays, that's a 1 day a week setting. Did want to advise the Board Model Schools Conference will take place the 23rd through the 26th. Again, we talked about the possibility of moving that board meeting. Mrs. Varner, I don't believe will be back by that Thursday. I would be back, so if that's, we'll get that as something on our next agenda item. We do have multiple presenters at the model schools this year. Of course, the team from Kingwood Elementary will be presenting, and Kingwood has been designated this year as a 2024 model school. Mrs. Nally and Kelly Murray will also be presenting at the conference. So we're very, very excited, with obviously our level of representation at the Model Schools Conference this year. Mrs. Varner, anything to update on the personnel side? Okay. And our next board meeting will be scheduled for Monday, June 10th. Board members, I will say I will be out of the office starting this Thursday through the following Friday. I'll certainly be available by phone if anyone needs to get a hold of me, and Mrs. Varner will be available for potential questions as well that may come up in my absence.
I make a motion, Mr. Martin's not allowed to take his cell phone.
Unfortunately, I'll have to keep that on me. I can remember one year I was ordering laptops from Disney World. So just the nature of the game sometimes. Okay, board members, that's all I have at this time, Mr. Huggins.
Any questions for Mr. Martin, other than not to take his cell phone? Okay.
Just a question since there
Sure.
is. The big colorful rainbow technology thing on wheels down in the student parking lot, did that get used at all this school year?
I know they did do some programming. I know they did programming at the Brewston School. Ms. McDonald, I don't know, are you aware of any other programming options that was utilized this year? Learning in Motion bus.
The bus itself was used at Brewston, and that was it this year. The problem is we don't have a designated
Driver.
person to run it right now.
Is it for programming? Is that what it is? Is that what you're saying it is?
Yeah,
They
STEM kids.
They took out the seats and inside there's like learning stations, and they put the kids on the bus and stations, and there's technology and things like that, STEM activities and things like that. It was not fully operational when I took over this job, and we haven't brought it back to life. But we have all the materials that were inside the bus that people can loan out for like STEM nights and things like that.
And that's when it's been typically used, is for requests for parent engagement nights and things of that nature. I think Brewston they had used it for at least a couple days when they had programming this year.
I was supposed to put in STEM labs, which has made it not quite
Right.
as much of a novelty, because the kids are able to go to a permanent space in their
Mm-hmm.
didn't use those kind of activities. That's what's.
Like, I mean, that was just part of my, the statement was made to me by somebody who was just like, well, we got that, but now everybody has a computer, and so we don't really use it. And so I don't know if it has any value. I'm sure that value is going down. I don't know if we have a way to encourage its use, if we have a way to find a way to, I mean, like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, is Mr. Fortney still in the county? I know he's retired, but like,
He
you know,
is.
he was my
Ed
computer
Fortney,
science.
yeah.
Ed Fortney's still in the county.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he was my computer science teacher, but like, finding somebody who had a love, I mean, like, he was great, but like, who would like to go out and use that as we've got all kinds, there's incentives going on all over the place, like, it's gotta have a cool factor. I don't know if this is time and place, but if we can come up with some way to utilize it, or otherwise, let's get out of it, whatever value is decreasing every year. I mean, literally, if we used it once in 365 days, you know, in a school year, at one school for one night, like, it catches your attention. I don't know anything about it, but it catches your attention. But the question is whether it's good attention or bad attention based on its use, so.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, moving on. At this time, I entertain a motion for the board to approve the service personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tatham, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
At this time, I entertain a motion for the board to approve the professional agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Ms. Feathers. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
At this time, I entertain a motion for the board to approve the attached MOU between Preston County Schools and Messenger Speech Therapy.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Next one is a quick update information on PHS student government policy.
Just based on our last meeting, Mr. Huggins, I've sent an inquiry to Mrs. Croyle, but I've not gotten back. I'm hopeful I can have something compiled in regards to the discussion from the 513 meeting related to the possible policy alignment between the three policies that were referenced during that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, entertain a motion for the board to approve the superintendent to explore the option of running an excess levy on the November 24 general election ballot.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussion?
So this is essentially us authorizing the levy committee to determine if they want, or is this you? Who makes the determination as to whether or not we're pursuing this in November?
I ultimately have to make a recommendation to you all as a board, but I've done so in working in consult with the levy committee. Obviously, we need to drive data from this election in terms of polling data, in terms of pulling the information from precinct by precinct voter tallies. I know that there's been some work by members of the levy committee to almost, I don't know the word I want to use here, but certainly try to break down and look at the possibilities and whether the feasibility of running the levy again. So this is more so, we obviously have a finite amount of time. I would just like to, if this is something that at least this board would want me to consider, I just would like to get the ball rolling as soon as possible. This by no means commits the board to running a levy. It's just that this is allowing me to start the process to explore that as that potential option.
Okay, anything else?
For the realm of legalities and also your opinion, how quickly does that need decided?
I'll pull the timelines. I need to actually reach out to, and I plan to reach out to Mrs. Huggins before I depart. I'd like to see if we can get the precinct by precinct tallies, and in addition, just the timeline to know when we actually have to have it approved at this level and supplied to the county to potentially get an item on the ballot. But I'd rather start right now than wait. There'll be certain specified timelines that would have to hit if that decision is made. So I'd rather start as, this was our first opportunity to at least assess if that's a possibility.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next on the agenda, entertain a motion for the board to authorize the superintendent to explore the options and report back to the board related to the possible closures of Fellows-Ville Elementary and/or Rollsburg schools.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussion? The only thing, if I'm reading it correct, this is just giving you, same as the other one, authority to look at.
Again, I would like the ability just to see if the board would like me to bring forth information related to that. The one thing that was included with this item is just the policy, the state policy in relation to school closure processes. It's inclusive of timelines and some of the procedural things that have to happen associated with this. Again, this is just something that obviously we have to look at all potential expenditures, so I think it's just responsible to at least look at the potential options that are potentially before us, because again, there's going to be certain timeline thresholds that have to be met, so it's better that we would assess this process sooner rather than later if it's the will of the board.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Motion passes 4-0.
Moving on, next, entertain a motion for the board to approve the superintendent to explore the options and report back to the board about the possible development of policy related to the institution of activity fees for athletic and other extracurricular activities for the 24-25 school year. Academic year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kisner, second by Mr. Tatham. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next on the agenda is discussion information. Preston County Schools Policy 4-9 has remained in effect during the past 5 years, which the district had approved levy funding designated to offset the cost of facility use requests for designated Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4 users. Any rental fees and custodial cook or supervisory costs that have been previously charged to the levy fund over the past 5 years will now be charged to the requesting individual or group for any newly submitted request after July 1, 2024, in line with the attached policy.
So, Mr. Huggins, from an informational standpoint, I just wanted to provide the board with our current policy that's on the books. This is a policy that has not gone away during the course of the levy. It's just simply that if there were fees associated with a particular classification of groups' usage, those fees were paid for by the levy. This is just more so to reinforce that obviously following the failure of the levy post July 1, that these groups would then be potentially subject to the fee structure that's inclusive within the policy. Again, this is why it's informational. We're not proposing any changes here. It's just that obviously over the last 5 years, the fees that are inclusive within this policy have been directly billed to the levy fund, whereas post July 1, they'll be directly billed to the associated group that's requesting use of the facility. It also references in there that what classification of groups or what types of activities would be subject to, for example, custodial or kitchen fees or supervisory fees. So again, no changes here. It's just pointing out this is the policy on the books, and post July 1, how we would potentially at that juncture apply the policy that is currently in effect.
So just to reinforce for anybody listening, activity fees are not a retaliation. They are not a discipline. This is not payback. This is something that has been there, and you graciously paid it through levy dollars.
Correct.
And unfortunately, those levy dollars will not be there to pay that for you. There was always an admission fee. There was always something. Somebody was always paying it. Just now, it's whoever's using it will no longer be covered. That's no longer covered.
And I'm glad you made that point, Mr. Kisner, because that's absolutely correct. This is an existing policy on the books. During the course of the levy, we had a designated funding source to allow those groups to use the facilities without charge because the levy was paying for the associated fees. So I do appreciate you making that point. What we would look at, obviously, is any requests that are post July 1 that have been already submitted in advance of this meeting. With any level of carryover here, we'll try to fulfill those, but it's just that post July 1, we would then have to begin billing groups in line with the existing policies.
It's the same as the federal government currently paying for your students' lunch. If at some point in time the federal government decides they're not going to pay for your students' lunch anymore, you can't be mad and say that they're doing something bad to you in the future because they're not doing something nice that they did in the past.
Yeah.
Like it's not a repercussion.
It's still getting paid for somehow, just a different way.
Yes. So for anybody listening, all 5 people on the stream, like this is not anything out of anger. Somebody has to pay for it. It has to be paid for somehow. Somebody was paying for it before through levy dollars, and now we're not because we don't have it.
Okay, very well said. Anything else? Thank you for the informational update.
Good.
Next on the agenda is the maintenance work order system updates. Any questions or comments on it?
I will ask Mr. Murray to pull together a compilation of the reporting from obviously July 1 to June 30th. Mr. Sines typically also will pull together a technology report as well.
Okay, thank you. Before the next meeting, anybody have anything they want on the agenda? Okay. Before we leave, you mentioned graduation. I want to be remiss not to thank our senior board member. And I appreciate you being here. I'm not sure how many times you're coming, if you're coming all summer. I'm not leaving you out, Mr. Manco.
We'll see.
But by the senior she has completed, I want to thank you. You have been an added insight, for sure, both of you.
Agreed.
Okay, and I will also compliment you on your speech.
Thank you.
The other night at graduation, I think you had 5 board members that were grinning pretty widely, listening to you and watching you. And on behalf of the board, we wish you the very best next year as you go on to college. And I don't think you'll ever forget where you came from, because it amazed me that all the speeches were very proud of Preston High. Your brother did a great job, and another example what Preston County Schools can do and has done. So I do want to thank you. I appreciate you. Mr. Manco, the same. It's just you're a junior. Okay. Next year,
He
somebody
pinned my
else.
boutonniere on, I'll tell you, he did a great job.
Next year, somebody else will be here, and hopefully, if you're still on the board, that they'll brag you up like that.
You should.
I'll call you out.
If not, you can look me up, and I will make sure they do. Okay, with that, I'll entertain them. Anybody else want to say anything to her?
Just, I'm sorry, I meant to jump on this earlier during the superintendent's report, but 171. 171 is the number of students that graduated CTE completers. 160 is what was mentioned, but it was 171.
I think that was, because I was counting,
Yeah.
there was some word at the
But-
ceremony.
But
You're correct.
more importantly is that's out of 260,
250-ish.
256.
256 graduates. Think
impressive.
about the percentage of that.
It's impressive.
Just again, for anybody that didn't catch on, 171 out of 256, the percentage of our students that are CTE completers of some magnitude is far outweighing those that are not.
In
right?
Mon County's was 200.
Yeah.
Was
Like,
in the paper.
I don't think that
But I
we
mean, that's out of
fully-
all theirs versus
Yeah,
Preston High.
Yeah.
to
I just
drive
don't
that
think we
point
fully
home.
grasp how much of the CTE program is affected. Those are the completers, like,
It is huge.
so
Wasn't
I
it
just,
higher?
yeah.
That is true. And
67%?
How much?
67%.
67%.
Yeah, and so I had it just under 70, just off, but
Yeah.
yeah. But anyways, I meant to point that out during his thing, not to correct your 160, just that is a huge percentage of kids that are affected by those CTE opportunities that I know we have so many, and there's probably 100% of them take some course over there, but just to think about that as how many of our students are graduating with some kind of skill innately, that not just a skill, but a skill with a certificate
It's
behind it.
employable.
So anyways.
And like I said, I'm not picking on Mon County because they had it in the paper. They had 200 out of their county, out of all their schools. So if you add up Mon County, University
Yeah, their
High,
percentage is much
Morgantown
lower.
High, and Clay Patel, you're dealing, Preston High, that's absolutely, that's
But
a good
just all
point.
those decisions that we have to make, how the scheduling, and I know it's been a nightmare for everybody trying to find a way to make it all work. That was an astounding amount of affected students and families, that I just I didn't get the grasp on, and I'm sorry, I just meant to point that out during the super, and I forgot.
Appreciate that, Mr. Kisner.
That's good. Anybody else hearing nothing? I entertain a motion for adjournment. Ms. Feathers.
So moved.
Second. It's been properly moved
You
and
seconded
seconded me.
Okay.
I had to
Didn't give
help
anybody
her
Not
else a
arguing.
chance.
I had to help her out. Call for the vote.